Okay, while we're waiting for other people to come up, some people are bringing their food from downstairs up. You've described some of your experiences in dealing with racism, undergoing your own awakening. Some of you have been dealing with ways to wake up other people, which is what happens when you wake up. You want to share it. Usually the first person you want to share it with is your parents, which is probably the hardest experience. The child is coming home to wake up the one that gave birth to him and just saying, "You're going to tell me something?" Oh, really? So the question is, what we've described so far, do you see this fitting any of you? Because I can certainly see where people have described certain realities, and I'm also getting a refined understanding of certain reactions. But what do you see? Because the main thing I want to get into is African identity. I'm waiting for people to come up and then get into this Quran. But I want to see, what do you get out of this? You see this? Yeah.
I think everyone has his own experience. What someone is thinking is not wrong. It's that person's own experience is different from mine, and I don't have the right to say you're wrong, because you cannot tell what's wrong in this case.
Yeah, one of the things you're seeing is even the same circumstance, people react differently, even though people have slightly different experiences. Because the experience of racism being described, for example, is coming in different forms. You know, the outright one that you experienced of the biker, I mean, that's just clear, it's in your face. But this other stuff on your job, it's like, I'm doing everything I'm supposed to do. Why am I getting treated this way? That's a more subtle form. So what do you see? In what's being described so far, you see anything that fits you? Just so what?
So in my family also there's colorism. I have been a niece that's lighter than me, and she was always saying, "I'm lighter than you, I'm prettier than you." That's what
And anything else different about that niece and you, other than her description of that? How does she live her life? How does that affect her life, that view of herself?
Yeah, she told me she was going to a job, and there was a black
employee. Employee.
Yeah, black manager. Yeah, black manager. And she thought, yeah, I got a black manager, so we could connect. But the black manager was was acting white. Yeah, worse than a white person. Yeah.
Usually worse.
Now, this is the same person that said that she thinks she's better than prettier than you, but she expected to get a black manager that would act black.
Yeah.
Isn't that a contradiction? And that's showing craziness. Because on the one hand, she's acting white, but she's going to feel comfortable around somebody acting black. That's interesting. Anybody else? Do you see anything in this description and what you see as your experience? Yours. In what's been described so far, do you see any description that fits your experience?
Yes, because I think everybody, I'm not going to say everybody, I thought everything was good until I was confronted with reality. Mm-hmm. And that's when I started thinking, wait, it isn't.
So it sounds like your experience is a disturbance, a pre-disturbance experience where you're not really clear. You were not really clear. Why was this behavior occurring? Is that true? Or do you think you were clear they were treating you this way because you're black? You clear on that? Mm-hmm. And so you're trying to figure out what you're going to do about it.
Yes, and how. I can,
Mm-hmm.
because it ain't fair. It isn't fair because I have to work every day. I have to live my life every day, and I'm surrounded by these people.
Right.
So, and I'm going to see it every day.
Because you thought that when you got this education, and it's in a technical area too, that you'd be treated like everybody else. You know what they know, probably more.
Yeah.
You know?
And I never experienced racism directly or indirectly. So now it's getting started.
And so what do you feel you have to do now?
With everybody else. Let them know that this isn't right and we cannot accept it. And I was talking about the page on Facebook, and what I noticed is that the people, some of the white people that were commenting on the page, they are like policemen, and they are nurses, and they are people who are expected to care about us when we need it. We need it. So, but they are thinking like that. And I'm black, so they already have something against me, but they need to protect me, and they need to protect my children, because my children are going to be black too. So it's trouble.
So you're seeing that the same reaction that's coming to you on the job is coming to us on different levels, and it's going to come on your children.
Of course.
Yeah. And so you made a comment when you were describing your experience that you need to find yourself. Because you thought everything would just be all right. You had an education.
Yeah.
And that would be, everything's going to be
It's
all
not
right.
right.
And
No, it's
now
not
you've
safe,
discovered
not,
what? What's your big awakening on this? You discovered what from this? What have you discovered?
Well, that I'm not the same, because I'm not treated the same, not treated right, like it's supposed to, and I cannot accept that.
Not equally.
And that's a disturbance experience. That's a disturbance that's got you disturbed. You're concerned. And so the question is, what are you going to do about it? That's the question. And the fact that you're here, I saw those sparkling eyes yesterday. That means you're looking. That means I know those eyes. That means you're digging. Because you realize you got to go inside yourself and find some answers.
Find myself, yes.
And maybe this is a good experience because maybe you needed to do that whether the white people treated you equal or not. Maybe the bad experience is good.
But if they did treat us, if I never had this kind of experience, I never would have thought this way.
Exactly.
So I needed the bad experience to think this way.
That's a twin thing. Out of the bad, there's good. There's good and bad are all
I'm
together.
happy that happens. Because
Hey,
I know
hear
that's
that?
reality.
Oh, did you hear that? Say that louder. Say that louder.
I'm happy it happens. Because that's reality. That's going on around us every day. So.
Because she's facing the truth. Facing the truth. And I think that's the thing in life. The truth is the guide. I always tell people in group seven, I said it yesterday, don't follow me, follow the truth. And what is the truth? You'll discover it. And that's our passage in life. It's the truth. Nobody's got a monopoly on it. Awakening is the best experience you can have. Because that's what life is about. Hey, we got to stay in the state. It makes me feel good like a black man should. Or a black woman should. To hear that. Anybody else? You see how this applies to you.
No, I wanted to say, but she also already said that it's the reality. This is the country we are living in.
Yeah, and it made me think like, do I want to put children on this earth? Like it's like that. But on the other side, well, I need to because I need to
Yes.
make some more black people.
And as a conscious mother, you're going to be able to prepare them some
My
stuff
children
that you weren't prepared for.
Yeah, but it's double. So, but I'm not gonna be here in the next 70 years to secure them. So
Right.
I have to give them this knowledge.
And so you see, there are black people here saying, highly educated, that they got the education and everything, and that's not enough in terms of how they're treated. You see? So it's not just that slavery is over and everything is rosy. All we have to do is work hard. People are working hard and getting slapped upside their head because it doesn't matter whether you have a PhD and MA or no degree. The only thing they see is a black head. And they're going to treat black people the same way no matter what their degrees are.
Yeah.
That's a point.
We have to create our own reality,
Yeah, now that's true.
our own reality, your own business, maybe your own schools, your own everything.
But in her case, if she chooses to work in a laboratory and that's her choice, then the question is, what's the reality she brings to that laboratory in her head, in her relationship? How does she see all these races that she's around, and how does she deal with them? Because that's also a reality. It's all a question of where you are coming from, how you see yourself, and how you see others. That's a real question.
May I add something to this?
Yeah.
When you, at a certain moment in my ICT career, like I said, I fell upwards, and at a certain moment, everybody around me was highly educated. That's when you are hated. When they are highly educated and you are self-taught, or you got there by experience, that's when they hate you.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, they also,
Explain that a little further.
I think because that proves that you are genuine intelligent, and that's the. I mean, it's computers, and this society acts like this dead machine is smart, right? And here's a black man sitting on the seat of a white person because you don't touch the surface. You understand? And then on top of that, I don't got the papers that they have. So it's not honest. Or you got here by how do you call it in the United States?
affirmative action.
Affirmative action.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, because as you said, in your experience, people hadn't defined you as smart, but then you discovered it.
Right.
And then you discovered that even your parents hadn't seen it. And there's too many of us like that. White man says something, we believe it. In the States, they'll say that, your child's slow.
Yeah.
And some parents will even buy that. A
Yes.
lot won't, but a
Yes.
lot will.
But
And
what
then
if the teacher
child
is too
buys
slow?
it, they internalize that. They act accordingly. So in your disturbance experience, as you undergo an awakening, it's not going to matter how other people see you. It's going to matter how you see yourself. And in any situation, you'll transcend their reality, because that is the reality of being conscious. You don't care. This is my view as an awakened person. I don't care what anybody thinks about me unless I'm doing wrong. Then you have the right to call me. But other than that, I don't give 2 cents what you think. You understand? And it's when you get into a space of freedom where you understand why you're being treated the way you are, and you're not going to tolerate it. And you're going to create your own free space, because if you have a free mind, everything else around you is going to change. That's the key. That's a real key. Other than that, they take you down, because you internalize what their perception of you. Remember, seeing yourself through the eyes of others. No, you see yourself through your own eyes. And that's what the awakening process is about. And that's a path you're on. It's a good path. You hear me? And you're going to find you're going to be called crazy on this path. There are going to be people who were satisfied with you when you were just doing everything. The good girl, smart girl, got the good grades, got the good job. She's successful. But when you become awakened as you are now, they're going to say, she's crazy. What happened to her? She doesn't like white people. Oh, she's mad. You know what I mean? But when they say you're crazy, that's when you are not. And when they say that you are all right, that might be when you've got a problem. You know what I mean? That's what's happening. So
upside down girl.
yeah, it's upside down, exactly. So don't worry about that. In fact, you're going to find that people who are defining you, treating you the wrong way, these are the people, as you change your own identity, your consciousness, I'm going to tell you one of the first things that happens with white people. They become afraid of you.
When it becomes to what?
Afraid
Oh,
of
yeah.
you.
Can I say something
Afraid
about
of
that?
you.
Can I say something about it real quick? Because she said that we had a questions a couple of years ago, like, must we then send our children to day school? Like, make that sacrifice, because there will be a sacrifice in the family, because always one of the parents is going to be present with the children. So at the same time, you got the pressure of the society, pushing on you for getting, just the basic food, clothing, and shelter stuff. And on the other side, then,
So there's a couple of realities to that. One reality is like you're doing homeschooling. That's a good reality. And I thought you couldn't do it here. There's an exception. He's in the exception. And they're treating him like hell, but he's walking through it. So that's one reality. But then there's other realities that I've seen. The reality is for most black people in the Western world, I'm in an organization that has an independent black school that's run it since 1972. 90% of our students go to college, 50% get scholarships. You understand? Mm-hmm. One of my former students, Davidi, his granddaughter, who's an average student, got a $30,000 a year scholarship from New York University and a NASA summer internship, National Aeronautics and Space Administration. And she's not that good at math, but she's okay. She got B pluses and stuff. And my former student's teacher, I'm not good at math. They didn't learn it from me. You know what I mean? But the point is, the black school provided that. But then I know people who put their kids in the public school. But you know what? They knew how to develop their consciousness. And those kids just did as well as this. In fact, this kid didn't want to stay in this black school. The grandfather kept her in there. She had no choice. So the point is, the home parenting is good. If you have an independent school, that's good. If you have a Saturday school, that's good. But the reality is, do you get in the heads of your child to where the child, you're defining their reality because you've defined your own. You're able to do that. My wife has done that with her son. You know what I mean? And surrounded him with all kinds of activity. So to be a parent now takes strategy, it takes skill, it takes smartness. Yes. Pam is really good at this. I mean, she did stuff I wouldn't have known how to do. You know what I mean? But so the point is, it's a question of the consciousness of your parents. It doesn't guarantee they'll be saved because there's other realities. But if you try and control those realities as much as possible, you've got a good chance. But it starts with you. So either way it works, it starts with you. Anybody else? You see anything in yourself in this? And I want to get into this maybe.
If you go to work someplace and you are the oldest black person there, and you have so many degrees, and all the whites who are there have less, they hate you for that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They feel you shouldn't be there.
They feel they shouldn't be there.
Yeah, and the reality is they're going to wage psychological war on you. I have a friend who's Black United Front, or best chapter, black belt in karate, a master's in engineering, John Webster. Real nice brother, about 58 years old.
Yeah.
Best chapter we had in the Black United Front. And he'd worked in this engineering company for whites for years. And they're building a bridge. And so the owner comes in and he did the math on the bridge. And the guy said, well, do you know that's going to work? He said, yeah, I did the math. He had a master's. Most of these guys don't have no master's in engineering. And he said every day they were trying to break down his confidence in himself. So what did he do? He formed his own engineering business.
Yeah.
And he's got buildings, and it's hard to have business in Kansas City because it's a conservative, white Republican, state is Republican. But he's got buildings all over the place. But he said, as soon as I got my own business, he said, it was a different story because they had you questioning yourself at every minute. You know what I mean? So, that's part of the reality. But again, it's a question of how do you see yourself? Okay, when I want to get into this final one, then we get into Quran. Well, there's actually two final ones. It's African identity. And that's what many of you are either in, you've described it, or you're on the brink of getting into it. Or should be. Let me put it that way. This late date, you should be. I mean, it was 30 years and you found it. Well, hey, come on. If you're 25, get it then. But it's your choice. So disturbance is the thing that disturbs you. You get the experience of thinking for yourself. That is one of the things that causes you to want to embrace your past. And we've heard different experiences of how that works. So the African identity stage is the decision where you decide. It's very funny. It's like a dog deciding. A German Shepherd, I want to be a German Shepherd. So it's kind of funny, isn't it? But if you thought you were white and you decide you're going to be African, well, even though you look to everybody else like you're an African, well, to you, that's a big decision. You've decided to be yourself. You know what I mean? And so the thing is, at the stage of African identity, the key thing is that you have experienced this mental freedom. You have been disturbed. You are angry. There is something that has caused you to see there's something wrong. In your case, you were doing everything they told you to do. There's something wrong. They haven't accepted you. You concluded you've got to accept yourself. Other than that, you're smart. You figured out you'd be hitting yourself against a brick wall if you continue to try to get them to change. You have to change yourself. Not because there's anything wrong with you, but there is something wrong expecting someone else to have a view of you. When it's you that has to have the right view of yourself. And what they're doing is wrong, so not denying that. So it's the decision to be African, and it's a decision to be free. It's your first step. And so always the stage of African identity is twofold. It is drawing from the best of your African past and the best of your African Jamaican, African Suriname, African American, whatever it is. It's always a double take. Because if it's not, then you're not going to be real. If you're only doing the African part, then how are you going to apply it to your life? And so it's always a double take. So when you're undergoing this transformation, it's pursuing in-depth knowledge of your ancient African past and of your new African past, your Suriname past, your Jamaican past, your Barbadian, whatever your past is, the African American past, it's both. Because that's the nature of it. African identity is about this. You can't go forward in the future unless you go to your roots, to your past. It's the key. And you really can't love yourself unless you love the roots from which you draw. The key thing about African identity is, how deep do you dig? That's the key. And the thing about African identity is, it's lifelong. There's no such thing as, I'm African. Now remember, in Africa, they didn't have to tell you to be an African. But pursuing whatever the knowledge of an African was, it was lifelong. And that's what this is. Because if you start to slide and back off, you can slip and go in the other direction. So it's constant digging. The other thing about this stage of African identity is it's got to be balanced. It depends on the balance you need. If you're an artist, the balance may be more in the arts. But always it's history. You've got to draw from your history. And always it's culture. And so it's the balance. Because the depth and the balance is what really determines the transformation of the person. Because that's really what life is about, is a struggle for balance. And so that's a constant working. So this is the key thing. So in this case, reading is absolutely essential. If we came out of oral societies, then what would happen is the masters who had the books in their head would pass this on to us. And that's just as good as this. But in this case, we're coming out of societies that are no longer purely oral, but the oral is important. And so a lot of this information you're going to get in your past, some of it will come from your grandparents and everything else about your African Caribbean past, your African South American past. But a lot of this about your history as such is going to have to come from other sources. And reading is essential. And I'm going to say this about the hip-hop generation. They are too much into the computer. Too much into, as soon as you give them a source, they're going to, what's this, Wikipedia. And they got 2 pages on everything. I mean, I know guys who are master debaters, and they all debate all over the country and win debates on 2 pages on something. I said, you know, I could whip you on anything, because as soon as I cite something, you can quote me 2 pages. I said, I know books on this. I said, how do you beat people? That's all they know. You know what I mean? Huh? And these are college graduates, too. A students, too. But the point is here, if you want depth in terms of your identity, you have to have depth in terms of your knowledge. And so you've got to be pursuing this in depth.
Hell yeah.
The other thing about this is the pursuit of your past involves, usually this happens psychologically. When you decide to be yourself, and depending on how long you were somebody else, if you were in this stage where you wanted to be white and you were conscious of it, or unconscious of it, or you're in this disturbance state where you really didn't know what was going on, you weren't clear. What happens when you get into this African identity stages, it's like a drug addict. When a person's on drugs, what do they have to do to get off? What's the thing that happens when they get off? What happens to them? What do they call it? Detox. And what else do they call it?
Rehab.
Rehab. And what else do they call it?
Cold turkey.
Withdrawal.
Yeah.
You have withdrawal symptoms. You know, however it goes. In the early stages of African identity, it is a natural feeling to want to withdraw from the presence, if you were in the white identity stage, of people you identified with, because it's not your natural identity. And because you discover things. At disturbance, the disturbance can be the experience with racism. It can be your experience with history. You discover some things about what white people have done to you. Whatever it is. It can be the disturbance of all these murders that are occurring in the States to black youth by the police. Whatever is disturbing you, the point is you reach a point where the people you were identifying with, you don't want to be around anymore. This is what happens with drug withdrawal. You have got to withdraw from the substances inside your body. Well, in this case, these are the substances that have caused you illness of a different type. You got to withdraw. It's of 2 types. It can either be psychological or physical. But it's always got to be psychological. If you look at Malcolm X, it was psychological, 7 years of withdrawal. With me, 8 or 9 or 10 years. I was engaged in struggle, but I had nothing to do with whites other than to fight them. And then people called me crazy. You know what I mean? Because my name was Bill Bradley. It suddenly becomes Oba T'Shaka. You know what I mean? And I'm into spiritual stuff. Oh, he's gone crazy. Same thing with Malcolm. But the point is, I didn't want to be around him. In fact, that was most of my life. I didn't go through withdrawal. San Francisco State, I got tenured. And I didn't know, I only knew one white person on the faculty. Now, you don't get tenured if you don't know white people, right? Wrong. Because I knew I was in it, but not of it. You know what I mean? So the point is, withdrawal is absolutely necessary. So in some cases, like me, I could do 7, 8 years. I wasn't working for anybody white for a long time. I was in the movement, all this stuff. Some people, but it's always psychological. Even when you're around them, you aren't. Because you are transcending to another world, another view, another perception of yourself. You know what I mean? And withdrawal is absolutely necessary. if you check out the Chinese Revolution, even though Mao did some wrong things, part of that Cultural Revolution was to withdraw people from certain influences. Now, Mao was doing other things, we found out. He was solidifying his power. He didn't do like Stalin and kill people, send them to the countryside. A few of them got dropped from some windows. He didn't do that, but the young people that he sent out there did that. But the point is, it was also trying to withdraw from Western influence. He was also attacking Chinese culture because he was a little too old to be in power. He should have resigned. But the point is, so withdrawal is absolutely necessary because this is a period where you're going to look at yourself. And so when you're studying your past, the first thing that's going to happen, and this is a natural thing, it's like the experience of love. When you have the experience of love, what happens in the first phase when you fall in love with somebody? What do you think about it in the first phase? What do you think about it? You're in love. Anybody ever had the experience of love? What do you feel about the person that you love?
Perfect.
They're perfect, right? No faults. That's romance. That's what happens in the first phase of African identity. It's romance because you've been told everything bad about Africa. You've been told that Africans haven't done anything. That Hegel stuff we talked about. All that white supremacy stuff. Arabs are taught the same thing. Latinos are taught the same thing. You know what I mean? Asians are taught the same thing. Why do you think some of them try and get rid of their slanted eyes? You know what I mean? So the point is, you know, you reach a point where you discover suddenly that Africans started civilization. You find out, oh, these are the first people on the planet. Humanity starts with us. Then you find all the things that black people did, and suddenly it's all good. It's romance. And you see, you don't see anything negative in Africa. All you see is positive. And whereas before, the more assimilated you are, the more negative you are about yourself. Wow. And suddenly it's a flip. And it's a flip from negative to positive. And this is usually in this stage where you see all good in black and all bad in white. Not everybody, but a whole lot. I know I went through that. I'm not going to lie. You know what I mean? And so that is a part of this transformation process because romance is absolutely necessary for love. It may be false. You may have missed a lot of things, but it's always good to keep some romance even after the romantic phase is over. You know what I mean? Because it keeps some spice in the relationship. And the thing about your relationship to your past is there always should be some of that romance there because there's so much beauty there. So that's a real key thing. It's romance. But then there's a point where you realize that, well, you know, guess what? Not all black people are good. You know, not all black people are highly achieving. I can't turn my back on all black people. And you realize not everything in African history was great. And you start to realize, uh-oh, I got to get back to reality. And this is a period where you start to proceed with balance. And so the balance is you're looking at the positive, you're looking at the negative, and you're discriminating between the two. This is absolutely necessary in your recovery of yourself. Now, the key thing about African identity is this. It's important that you look at the great achievements. But the key thing in African identity is studying your past. Look at the values that come out of your culture. That's the key thing. That's the key thing. And so for me, and by the way, most people when they're undergoing the awakening experience at the identity stage, they can tell you the first book they read. Or the first person that turned them on to African identity. I heard someone say Tupac. Someone else will say, my friend turned me on. You can usually point to the person or the thing or the book. For me, the awakening experience was disturbance. But the thing in African identity, the book was Lost Cities of Africa by a white boy, Basil Davidson. Usually, whatever it is, it's the first thing you get your hands on. Usually. because usually it's not a systematic thing of, oh, I'm going to study Africa and I'm going to start with the beginning, the Twa, and then I'm going to go to the Kemites, and then I'm going to, you don't know who they are.
Nope.
The first thing you get your hands on, it's like a drowning person, you know? That lifeboat that comes, you grab it. But I find it's interesting, a lot of times what people use as the first thing that opens their eyes up, it usually matches something they need. And in my case, even though Basil Davidson is a white guy, that book, Lost Cities of Africa, it was very good as a first book. And I have it in my library. And it's underlined all over the place. Underlined. And I remember exactly what I read. I usually don't underline books. I usually take notes on it. Because a book is a sacred thing. I always tell people, I don't let people take my books. But even they touch them, I say, baby, treat a book like a woman. You hear me? Don't be mashing the pages and all that stuff. You know what I mean? Treat it nice. But that book, it was like the first one. Underline this. But the thing that impressed me most was that I discovered that whereas I'm living under a system of private property, the Africans are living under a system of communalism. You heard me talk about this yesterday, where everything's shared. That was the thing that hit my head, because I'm in a movement, and I'm looking for an alternative to the system. And I realized African people shared the whole time. And then this is what happens. When you're going through African identity, what you do is begin to compare your values to the values of your past. This is a real key thing, because it's a self-assessment phase. You're going through inventory. And so what you're doing is looking at, because when I looked at communalism, I said, well, that's how my grandmother and great-grandmother survived. They looked after each other. And my father would describe in the Depression how white people in the 30s, their bones would be sticking out. They were nearly starving, but black people, their bones weren't sticking out, because you could go into a black person's house and they share their food with you. And I realized, okay, this isn't sharing the land, because in most cases we had no land to share. This is sharing the fruits of the land, whatever it was. And so what you're doing is matching yourself to your past and seeing where it is and where it isn't. And this self-assessment phase is matching your ambitions. Because if you're coming out of an assimilation stage or a disturbance stage and you wanted to take me, I wanted to be, imagine, a cop. Then later, a prosecutor, you know? And my wife always says I dress like I'm in the military. Well, I'm a soldier, you know what I mean? And so I was in the Marine Corps. I've never imagined being an officer or anything, but I was on that course. But when you're going through your identity phase and you're looking at the values of your past and yourself, you do a self-assessment. And your assessment is, why am I doing this? Am I doing this because this springs from my heart? These are my gifts? This is what I want to do? Or is this what my parents want me to do? Or is this what the society says I should do? You understand? Is this good for my people and myself? Will this make me happy and other people? Or is this going to make someone else happy? And so this is a period of self-assessment. You've got to take an inventory of yourself. Look at yourself and be very honest about it. You know what I mean? So this is all a part of African identity. And so for different people, they're going to use different tools from their past. And it's always their African and their African American past. And so this is a pursuit. There's a point of transformation in African identity where the caterpillar turns into a butterfly. There's a point of transformation. You never know when that's going to happen, but that's a real transformation. The thing about African identity is this. When you have reshaped yourself, then you are not defined by others. You define yourself. The thing about African identity is you see beyond your reality. Big thing about African identity, and this would be true of Asian, Native American, whatever it is, you're not focused on white people, for example. My wife knows, in my house, she ever hears me talking about white people. I don't waste my time. If I fight them, I beat them. You know what I mean? But it's no big deal. I don't write that much about it. I spend a lot of time on their worldview because it's a part of what we miss. And you need to know that. But the point is, my focus is on my people, and it's on my future, and it's seeing beyond them. I have real good health, no stress, no high, sugar diabetes, no nothing. I'm 76. I'm in real good shape. Pam and I, we lift weights, and we work out and all this kind of stuff. And the point is that when you get to this point, your health improves. You ain't got no stress. You cause stress. That's what I do. I delegate heart attacks, strokes, and high blood pressure. I'm serious. On my job at San Francisco State, if they wanted to scare the faculty, not me, because I didn't see why anybody would be afraid of me. I don't have no army. They'd say, Shaka's coming. And these white people would go, ah! And it was the black provost, black vice president for faculty and student affairs. She's the one, Penny Sappho was my buddy. She'd tell her, Shaka's coming. You know what I mean? The point is, I don't care about you. There's nothing you got that I want. And if you come messing with us, we're going to kick your behind. And it's not physical, it's political. Yes. And the president was afraid of me. You know what I mean? Why are you afraid of me? It's because you see beyond yourself. Because their values are not your values. You're in a different world. You're in it, but you're not of it. African identity is free space. Free space. You can be in the most impressed environment. You're free. I know black people who only feel free when they're in Africa. I love Africa. In fact, I love Cuba even more because they had real revolution there. When I'm in Cuba, I don't sleep. Because, I like what they did there. You know what I mean? It's a revolutionary situation. But when you have transcended your own circumstance, you don't have to be in Africa to be free. You don't even have to be in a revolutionary situation to be free because you're in your own mind and your mind is free. You know what I mean? That's the key thing. And that thing enables you to do everything else. And the key thing about this is you develop out of the return to your own roots, self-knowledge. You know yourself. That is your collective self. That enables you to understand your personal self. And then you gain self-respect. And then you gain self-discipline. And the most important thing you gain is self-love. And these are universals. This isn't just for black people. All people need this. God put us here to love ourselves. And that's been disrupted. It's a natural process. Babies come in, they ain't got no problem with love. They're taught something else. And by the way, this is a state where you should be free of fear, because fear is not real. I really want to say this. Fear is artificial, and of all the things that restrict spiritual growth, fear is the greatest restrictor. You cannot grow in a state of fear. And people who say they love God and fear God, there's no growth there. Because God is all kindness, God is all love, and whatever we do that's wrong, God didn't do it. In ancient Kemet, they have a saying that God created man, a moon, rock, created man, woman, the earth, and everything else. And wrong, man and woman decided to do that. God had nothing to do with it. But we're running around saying, why did God let us be enslaved? Why did God let this happen? God didn't do it. Some person did it. A white person in the case of slavery, or a bad chief. You know what I mean? But it wasn't God. God didn't have anything to do with it. So it frees you from fear. And let me tell you something. When you're free from fear, you're really free. Now there's a danger with the freedom of fear. Freedom from fear. The danger is you can take risks that are unnecessary. That's the danger. So you've got to always be aware, particularly if you're leading something, don't put people in danger just because you're fearless. Don't do stupid stuff. You know what I mean? And don't think you're invincible. But the point is, when you're free of fear, then you're capable of anything. And you really can't love in a state of fear. You can't love yourself. You can't love anybody else. And fear was the thing they tried to instill in us. And I want to say this. Our ancestors didn't buy it. They came out scarred, but they came out with their humanity intact. And these were the toughest people we had. We don't even get close to them. Those enslaved ancestors and the ones immediately after slavery, they were the toughest. They were the closest to Africa. They were hurt. They didn't always know how to say, baby, I love you. And they would sometimes slap you to get you the message. There was some confused love in it, but they were some strong people. And you all know them. Big Mama, your grandmothers, your great-grandmothers, your grandfathers. They were tough people, and they were good people. They had morals, strong morals, and they were kind people. Carter G. Woodson said of these people, he said, in our enslavement, you had land and you had all kinds of problems. We had literally nothing. Nothing. And Carter G. Woodson, our great historian, said, if a black person had 25 cents, he would give it to another person, another black person. And he said, we were kind to a fault. That's true of all of us. And there's no fault with being kind. And that's why we were able to save each other. If you look like a place like Jamaica, should be a heaven on earth. It's not the Jamaicans' fault. It's self-hating African leaders and the IMF, who they bow to. You know what I mean? Because that's a self-sufficient people. That island should be heaven on earth. But they bow to external forces because they don't like themselves. And that's true all over the world. Africa should not be suffering now. And I don't just blame it on the leaders. I know the World Bank, International Monetary Fund, neoliberalism. I know all of that. But you don't have to succumb to that. You don't have to. So that's the key. And I would say with this, the key for African leadership is love yourself. If you love yourself, everything else is going to happen. You know what I mean? Because you're going to look out for your people. Your people come first. Not money. Not power. You know what I mean? It's real simple. Return to your source to love yourself. If you love yourself, you'll love everybody else. And if you don't, you'll be a danger to yourself. So that's African identity. There's more to it, but many of you, you're conscious. Some of the elders, I know you've been through this for a long time. I'm not telling you anything. But the point is, you're going to take other people through it, understand it. But understand if you're beginning the path, this is what you're beginning. This is a beautiful experience. It's the most beautiful experience of your life. The only thing greater will be heaven. And you don't want to go there until you have to. I've seen a piece of it. There's nothing more beautiful than heaven. But we're here. Spirits line up in heaven to come here. You want to stay here as long as possible. And here's the secret on that. Have work to do, and the ancestors will keep you here a long time. Take care of yourself and have work to do. You'll be here a long time. Keep your work up. But if they figure you finished, the spirits will leave you. You click out. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I got some people, actually most of the black people, actually, and most people on world in general, they grew up without having a sense of what love really is. They don't know what love is. They don't know the definition of how love is. They cannot see it, feel it, hear it, whatever. And they don't know how to share it. They don't know how to express it. They don't know what to do with it. They may be full of love, but they don't know how to. And there was an interview of Tupac Shakur, that he was saying that fear is stronger than love. At that point, not everybody may agree with that. I wasn't agree with that either because I didn't understand what he meant. But I was in for many years, I was in a situation of fear. When you overwhelmed by fear, like years back to back, you cannot love a person.
Yeah, that's true.
And it's difficult to love someone. People might love you, but you don't know how to communicate on that. You don't know how to react on that. And because of your fear, you don't know how to share. that love, what you have. You don't know how to communicate with that. And once that fear is gone, you think you're powerful. You can do all that. That's what you answered. Like, you're gonna make mistakes. You can do things that may be unnecessary. But my question is like, how can a person that is actually overwhelmed by fear, that is, according to you, artificial, how can you switch the fear into love? How can you use your love good, productively, and spread it the good way, or like eliminate the fear in a few steps?
However it happens, you have to come to the realization that fear is a myth. That fear, what you're fearing is the idea. And once you experience that, you'll find that there's no reason to fear it. The biggest thing people fear is death, usually. If you know anything about death, you would know it's a higher form of life. There's no such thing as death. The Kemites have a saying, life is slow dying, death's a rebirth to a new life. We're all dying every day. And I don't want to go to the other side, but I've seen the other side. Now, there may be a reason to fear if you are a really bad person, because I'm going to tell you, the other side isn't nice if you're really a bad person. It is not nice. And it is a place of experience. It's outside of time and space. And so you'll be there a long time, whatever the Christians say, frying, whatever it is. It's a bad, and it's no devil. God rules it. God rules punishment. God ain't created no devil. That's a myth, a Jewish fairy tale that Islam and Christianity is bought into. God didn't create nothing all bad on this earth, and would not create anything competitive with him, her, with his spirit. You know what I mean? So the point is, it's when you come to the reality that what you're fearing is a myth. You know what I mean? Yeah. Some people have the fear of driving. When they drive, they find out it's a myth. Fear of white people. Oh, give me a break. They bleed just like you. They breathe just like you. And I tell you this, you're smarter than most of them. But the point is, yeah, they've got the upper hand right now. But the point, as a group, not individually. So the point is, fear is usually based on a myth. And you have to see through the myth. And it's taught because systems are based on fear for control. So you have to come to that realization. However you come to it, you have to come to it. I disagree with Tupac, but I understand his point, because he's making the point that fear can paralyze love. Doesn't mean it's more powerful than love.
Love is definitely greater than everything else on the base of the
Fear
universe.
can paralyze almost anything. That's why it's the great restrictor in spiritual growth.
It blocks everything that you want to do.
Right.
You cannot grow if you live in fear.
For example, the term white supremacy. We should stop using it, because they're not supreme anymore. And even when they got the upper hand in the world, it wasn't because they were supreme.
No.
They just happened to have the manufacturing of gunpowder. They had the Gatling gun. They weren't better fighters than us. 100-year Asante war against them, they won every war except the last one, with spears mostly, and knives, and machetes. 100 years, chopping the Englishmen to pieces. But the point is, we just didn't have the manufacturing of weapons. So where's the fear? You're running around using this term white supremacy. It's a term that instills fear. Where are they supreme in the world anymore? Yeah, they got more power. The U.S. has more power than anybody else. But their power is in decline. China's rising. Africa will rise when they get their act together. And we will get our act together. We just had a bigger mess to clean up. China didn't have the mess we had to clean up. You know? So the point is, you have to see through it. You have to see through it. In terms of love, it's about loving yourself. It's about coming to a realization of loving yourself. I hear what you're saying. Slavery posed problems with that, but we never lost self-love in slavery. That thing of self-hatred has been overworked. We have issues around color, issues around white people, issues around a whole lot of stuff. But the point is, basically, we didn't lose the love of ourselves. If we didn't, we wouldn't have been able to take care of each other. Because all we've had is each other. And so our grandmothers and great-grandmothers, they might have not have been able to quote some book on African history. They knew the book of their family. And they cared for their family. They nurtured their family. They loved them. So it's about self-love. You've got to come to that. But I hear what you're saying. If someone has never experienced it, it's hard to get it. But the thing is, it's going to come from within. You've got to find it from within. You know what I mean? Because it's God's within all of us. And I'm not saying this about black people, all people. God is within all of us. Our culture is God-centered. But too often, I didn't mention this yesterday, what the white man did with religion is take God out of the human reality, out of the earth reality. God was separate from what he created, or it created. When in fact, God's a part of all of us. It's a part of water, a rock, a deer, everything. And it's got the intelligence of God. And notice the nurturing of God. The law of animals is not the survival of the fittest. If that was true, then the baby cub wouldn't survive. The strong protect the weak. Yeah, they pray for food. That's about it. You know what I mean? So animals love each other. Everything God created has got love. When you see a flower bloom, that's God. That flower is making a statement to you, you know? And it's only a brief statement, and then it'll fall. But that's God's love. You look at that. I mean, every day you wake up and you look at the beauty around you. That's love. That's God. We got to see it. It's all around us. You know what I mean? But it's got to come from within. So this African identity, this is part of the path to doing it.
How do you call someone that doesn't embrace their African identity?
How do you do what?
How do you call someone that doesn't embrace their African identity? Because there's a tendency in the States that some African American people doesn't want to call themselves African Americans, but they say like, yeah, I'm American.
Or I'm Jamaican, or I'm already. So how do you deal with people who don't accept their African identity?
Yeah.
The same way you deal with yourself. That's the point of this. Understanding that people go through stages in terms of transformation. Understanding that that's a process. And so if you want to influence somebody, that can be an organizing technique. Look at your friend. How did it happen with you? Your friend dropped some knowledge on you. So that's one way. Yeah, because he's on your level. He's your friend. You're listening to him. And he can expose you to stuff that coming from somewhere else you might not listen to. So I'm an organizer. So I could say, you're dropping knowledge wherever you are. If you're on the bus or whatever you call it here, you know, you're in the church, you're in the school, you're dropping knowledge. You're in, I work out at the Y, you know, in the sauna. Drop knowledge. You know what I mean? And you do it in a subtle way. You don't say, oh, you need to love yourself. You just drop some knowledge. And you'd be surprised what that can do. But the point is, awakening is a cyclical process. So it just doesn't occur all at once. And one of the biggest mistakes people do when they wake up is, the first thing they want to do is wake their family up. There's nothing wrong with wanting to do that. But if it's your parents, be careful. They're your parents. You're going to come in and suddenly give them all the light. Oh, really? So, I mean, if you want to work that way, and some people do work it, you got to be subtle. You got to hit people at their level. Come at their level. When I described the brother that woke me up, he hit me at my level. He's got me a government major. He's telling me how the government works. And he's telling me the corporations are doing it. Well, how did that hit me? I'm fighting the corporations. The pieces are there, but I haven't put it together. Like you hadn't fully put stuff together, but you know now you've got to deal with yourself. So it hit me between the eyes because it was at my level. He wasn't trying to do that. He didn't know where my head was. He didn't know till 20 years later. I said, Norman, you woke me up. Everywhere I go, I say, Norman woke me up. You know, little guy, you know what I mean? And no ego, really nice brother. You know what I mean? But the point is, when you develop this, when you got this consciousness, then you've got the ability to patiently work with people. But do not try and overpower people. Do not try and just drop the knowledge on them like you know everything and they don't. Because it's an awakening process.
Yeah.
People have to come to this on their own.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, different strokes, as we say in the States, for different folks. How you do it with one person won't work with another. You know what I mean? Yeah, other questions on this?
I have a question.
Yeah.
How do you free yourself from the power that you have?
What do you mean, free yourself from the power you have?
Well,
Explain.
I've heard a lot of things, and for me, I'm in the stage of confusion. I've been reading a lot lately, and I'm between fear and confusion and my identity. And my identity starts with what my mother has given me, and now I'm hearing all the things that you said, and I see, and I think, yes, this is true. Like, not sitting like this. All the things that you say is basically African identity. I don't know how to say this. My mother is a Cape Verde. I'm from Cape Verde descent, and she always gave us music. And Batuku is one of the music that really bring me up, and it's really earth-based and really the rhythm of Africa.
That's a music of Cape
Yes.
Verde? Spell it? How's it spelled?
Batuku. Batuku.
It's also mundane.
It's a forbidden dance, and my mother's very strong with it and very African woman based. And can you spell it? Batuku. And it's women doing the rhythm. And for me, it's the beating of the heart, and they are dancing. They're dancing, and they give the message, and that's how they did on slavery, to give the message to the people, just to be conscious. So there's always a positive thing speaking, and my mother gave me that, and so I grew up with this kind of aware that there is so much more. And yeah, I studied.
So your question about confusion, that's usually a transition between disturbance and African identity.
Yes.
And what happens is you are in a transition, where you have been disturbed about what's happening to you, your people, and you're beginning to deal with your past. But when you first begin, you don't have all the knowledge. You got a lot of knowledge, and you may not have sorted it out. And the way the system works, you don't fully understand it. And so the point is, confusion is a natural thing in this process. It's a natural thing. And so you got to keep digging deeper. So it's not a question of being afraid of your power or anything like that. It's a question of having deeper knowledge of yourself. And the more you dig, the clearer it'll become.
With saying the afraid is, it's hard for me to explain, but what I was saying with afraid of powers is the creativity. I find myself a person of creativity, and one of the things that for me was the proof that I had in me was union people, and by culture, what you said yesterday. I gave a party that was totally spontaneous, and that brings a lot of positive vibe. Everybody liked it. It was very culture based, and it woke people up. And that was about 10 years ago. But I understand what happened. All people were together from different culture, different. It was Kyle meets Urban, but people were awake and they loved it, just by the culture that we had, the Cape Verde culture in this way. And yeah, for me, it's the thing that is, if I follow the system, I cannot accumulate my creativity, and that's maybe the fear that I have. And
Yeah, well, the point is, God's within all of us. The essence of being human is being creative. essence of being human. Being kind, you know, being truthful, all these things, good values. But the essence is we're put here for a purpose. Different spiritual systems have different beliefs about how we achieve that purpose. But the point is, whatever it is that brings happiness to you, that doesn't harm other people, that's usually the indication of your path for what you should do. And so the pursuit of your identity is part of getting you to the point of your destiny, which is the next part we're going to get into. It's your destiny. What's your purpose? So the last thing you need to fear is your creativity. But fear will definitely block creativity. It will block it.
Yeah. That's
Why
what
would
I
you be
lost,
afraid of it? Because it's like a flower being afraid to blossom. Why? You know what I mean? You shouldn't be afraid of it. Because it's your chance to be yourself. You know what I mean? That's the whole point about this, is to get to be yourself, not someone else. Not someone white or black, especially white, but not someone else, yourself, your gifts, bring your gifts out. That's the point.
Can I give a little advice? You can, actually it's for everybody, you can bring you back like to the days of your youth, when you're younger than 15, 14 years. The things that you really like to do it again. And there's nothing bad about being, like they call it childish. Like you need to grow up, and everything what you did in your youth, you have to throw it away. Some people they grew up, but they have no child in them anymore. They are like robots or sheep or slaves or whatever. They're like walking on the bandwagon, and everything from their youth is like blot out. They forget it. You have to keep the youth in you, because that was for most of the people was the most beautiful time. Not all youth had it all good, but if you're a child, the bad, even in war situations, still smiling, happy, and playing. You know, you don't focus on the guns or the sicknesses or other things. Your spirit is pure, so you keep smiling. So you have to go back to that time, and every day you repeat it again. What kind of games I like when I was 6 years old or 12 years old. So you do it again. But the only difference is you gotta grow. You're older. You're wiser. But you have to do it in a playful way. You have to play with it, because it's a game, and it doesn't. In this case, it's not about winning the game or losing the game. It's just play the game.
And that's life.
Just play it and be happy with it. Next day you go sleep, wake up again, play another game. And teach the same game with your girlfriend, with your uncle, your auntie, with your kids, with everybody. Just play with it. And you don't take it too serious, because everybody around you, they are too damn serious. Don't do that. No, don't. Just play with it, because they are too serious. That's why they are too old. But they are 30 years old, but they are gray. They are 40 years old, but they have already wrinkles, everything. But just play it. Let's go back to your youth. Your youth here, your play, and then repeat it every day. Wake up with a purpose, like I'm gonna jog, I'm gonna sport. You don't have to be in a fitness club or whatever. Just doesn't matter if it rains, snow, whatever. Go jogging for an hour or something, half hour, enjoy the weather, whatever. You come back, you take a shower, you plan doing other things, stay active, eat natural stuff and stuff. Do things that you really like, do things that make you laugh.
Okay, now that's a profound point for a young brother. Why is that?
I'm pretty old.
We know that. You don't have to tell us
I
that.
bet. I bet. Now, he said a lot of stuff that was heavy. And one of the most heavy ones, aside from being a childlike, because children are wise.
Yeah.
And when people start to criticize adults for being childlike, that's a compliment.
Yeah.
They're criticized, it's a compliment, because children are wise.
Yeah.
But the most important thing I thought you said, other than that, was happy. Because when you get to the point where you're pursuing your own gifts, you're happy. And that's the most important thing in life. Well, it's not the most, it's one of the most important. And that's, me, I'm a frowner, they say. I don't always smile, I don't frown. I'm just serious. But my look doesn't really tell you anything. I'm a warrior, but it's just the way I am. I could explain it, but you wouldn't understand it. But the point is, I'm happy. Just because I'm not grinning, I'm happy. And a rule in life is avoid the misery as much as possible.
Yeah.
Someone's going to come on you, but avoid it.
Yeah.
Don't do misery. Don't do misery.
Yeah.
And that's usually when you're going against your grain. Go with your grain, which is your nature. Follow your nature. And it's all creative. We just have different paths to it. This is beautiful, really beautiful. There's another stage, I'm going to be brief with it because I got to get into the Quran. That's the most important thing. It's revolutionary consciousness. And I'll be brief with it, but it's important. Not too many people get to this stage, but it's a very important stage. Malcolm X was a revolutionary. I just give him as an example, I'll be very brief. The stage of revolutionary consciousness, not everyone that goes through African identity embraces revolutionary consciousness. But it is a stage where as you love yourself, as you transform yourself to become a better person, you see a need to transform society. Just as you may have been pursuing values that weren't all that balanced or all that just, as you begin to get yourself more balanced and in a more just state, then ideally that's where a desire for the transformation of the largest society you live in is. And people who reach this state, they usually have a great concern for everyday people, the poorest people, the most oppressed people. If you look at Martin Luther King, King was a revolutionary. He was a nonviolent revolutionary. That's a contradiction, but that's what he was. He cared about the poor. If you look at Malcolm X, he cared about the poor. In my engagement in the struggle, we took on big corporations. We won. We beat the corporations. We got jobs. But I learned a lesson. That wasn't all a victory, because even though we got jobs for the people we got jobs for, this is a system that makes the rich rich and the poor poor. And I don't care how many jobs you get, most of the people are on the bottom and they're done out. And the reason is the system, as King said, is structured to put people out. And so revolutionary consciousness is where you're taking the just transformations inside yourself to transform society at large. And that takes a lot of guts, but it takes compassion, because basically revolutionaries, real ones coming out of our culture, care about people. And they care about eradicating suffering and poverty and misery. And that's what revolutionary consciousness is about. And there's more, but I don't have time. But not everyone gets to this stage. And they killed King because he was a revolutionary. But don't think you're going to be killed because you're a revolutionary. No. The point is, it's a natural growth process. It's the highest in the stages of identity. And it crosses all cultures. Ho Chi Minh was a revolutionary. He kicked America's behind in Vietnam. When he died, you could put all his possessions in a duffel bag. He didn't care about possessions. He cared about his people. You know? And that's why he was such a good leader. So, revolutionary consciousness. Now I want to get into the Quran. Hope we get a little bit more time here. This is a Kemetic symbol, and it's the scarab, the beetle, and the eye of Heru, and the wings of Horus on the scarab. And my ring is scarab. My name T'Shaka means beetle. You know? The beetle in ancient Kemet and among the Zulus. Zulu means heavenly people, means the same thing. It shows the cultural unity in Africa. the beetle or the scarab was said to be androgynous. They knew it wasn't. It was said to have both masculine and feminine qualities. They knew it wasn't. But the point is, it is symbolic of creativity. It is the sun at sunrise. It's the child pharaoh in ancient Kemet. Whereas Horus is 12 noon. Osiris is in the setting sun in the west, because Osiris represents life, death, and rebirth, represents transformation. He was a real ancestor of ancient Kemet. But the beetle, the dung beetle, is symbolic of transformation and therefore of creativity. And it's a union of masculine and feminine, because you can only create with these two. And so inside yourself, it's drawing on the masculine and feminine principle. My book, Return to the African Mother Principle, Male and Female Equality, is based on that. So the point about Paramp is it's a transformative system, and it's about rebirth and about transformation. These are symbols in Paramp. Parank means P-E-R-A-N-K-H. You have a summary there in the package that was passed out to you. It means house of life, which is the highest university system in ancient Kemet. And so you see on the top is a human being with their arms outstretched, north-south, and then moving from east to west. East is the realm of life. West is the realm of Asar. It's the realm of death and rebirth. And north and south, it means that this is a cosmic person. It means a human being is cosmic. And so it means that this is a system of transformation where you undergo life, death, and rebirth transformation. All African systems of education were about rebirth. And so we've dealt with African identity. African identity is your rebirth from all this madness to your Africanness. Africa didn't need that. They didn't have, ancient Kemet. They didn't have someone imposing their system on them. So this is something we need now for our own reawakening. But the point is, this is the point where when you have your identity together, it leads to you pursuing your destiny. We were all put here for a purpose. We all have gifts. Your gifts really are the indication of what your purpose is. The question is, what will you do with that? In Kemet, this is called your ka. It's your destiny. The Yoruba call it your ori. The Igbo call it your chi. Every African people, C-H-I, all African people have this idea of destiny. Another reason why they couldn't break you in slavery. And that's why you had these Obia men and women, because they were telling you your destiny in slavery. We never accepted this idea that we were slaves, a spirit or mind. We knew our bodies were enslaved and we were doing our best to free ourselves. But we never accepted that only God could be our master. We never accepted any human being could be our master. Black, white, brown, red, yellow. Do you hear me? So the point is, this is a system for cultivating destiny. And so you see up here Peru on one level, and this is so clear, so let me look at this. You say Tehuti is up here on the other level that the Greeks call Taut. You see Aset, Isis here, and you see her sister Nephthys. So these are the ancestors of Kemet. And we know that Osiris really existed. They found his head in a jar in a Bidos. He's a real person. Sure we can get one for you. In the center is Asar. This is Asar. And Asar is standing on 9 bows. The 9 bows are symbolic of the enemies of Kemet. And so what this is telling you is, this is their highest educational system, and the goal was to defend yourself against those that could threaten you. So Parak was really open to Kemites, but they allowed a few others in. Pythagoras went through the mystery system for 20 years. He was the best of the foreign initiates. And the proof is he never wrote anything about his mystery training. And in fact, he was a greater influence on Plato than Socrates was. You know? But very few foreigners were allowed into this. This is the highest educational system the world has ever seen. And the main reason is it worked transformation. Here's the rule. In Western systems, to know the truth is to repeat it. In African systems, to know the truth is to be it. To know the truth is to be the truth. And that means it's a lifelong process of transformation. And the identity transformation is the same thing. And the identity transformation brings you to your destiny. You can get to destiny without identity. You can be a Colin Powell. Maybe he was, maybe he picked warriorhood in heaven. But did he pick in heaven to fight for the wrong person or the wrong government? Or to fight for his enemy? I don't think so. And so identity helps clarify your destiny. You can pursue it without it, but chances are you'll be in a confused state. So this is Quran. And it's showing you north, south, east, west, that it covers. It's a universal system. Okay. Dr. Obenga put this together for me. How many people are familiar with Theophil Obenga? Raise your hand.
I heard about it.
He's Sheikh Anta Diop's best student along with Dr. Jacob Carruthers. But he's the one that studied directly under him. And he went to he went to Egypt and defended the idea that ancient Kemet was a black civilization. I think it was in 1972, a UNESCO conference, defended it against his former teachers. And when he was finished, only him and Obenga went in to defend the blackness of ancient Kemet. When they came out, the reporters said, the only people who came prepared was Sheikh Anta Diop and Theophil Obenga. And they said there was no argument. And Obenga's a linguist. He came in with a linguistic argument. Sheikh Anta Diop, a physicist, a linguist, a historian. And Obenga's, by the way, a paleontologist, archaeologist, historian, and linguist, by the way. He said Diop shared the fee with him. That was the humility of the master towards the students. So Dr. Obenga explained this. And he worked in our department for 12 years. I was on the hiring committee, so we set up a hiring for him, and then Obenga called me and said, Shaka, I need a lot of Mooney. He said, a lot of universities want me, and I knew that was bull. Nobody wanted him because he was threatening to all of them. He was the best, and Harvard would not want an Afrocentric chematologist. They wouldn't want him. You know what I mean? But I went for it. And so I told my dean, I said, I knew this wasn't true. I said, they want him all over the place. You're going to have to pay him more than you pay anybody in this university. Because we had the president scared. The president's only question was, why would you want to come here? So he got more pay than anybody else. Obenga, he'd stand up in class and say, they pay me a lot of Mooney. Obenga's one beautiful brother and brilliant, absolutely brilliant. So he explains that Parank means household temple, a house of life, temple, institute for higher learning. So the point is, this was a place where they trained all the skilled people in Kemet except warriors. Warriors were trained in the palace of the pharaoh. Now we're going to see in a minute, secret societies were really, African secret societies were the source of this. They also trained warriors. But here they made the separation. So This is training men and women as scholars, and physicians and astronomers and architects. Notice in ancient Kemet, astronomers and architects were the same. Imagine. You're building for eternity, and they were building according to the location of stars. Here, they build for obsolescence. Build a house in the United States, it lasts 40 years. Chances are black people get an old house that's already fallen apart. By the time you pay the mortgage, it's fallen apart. But there, they built for eternity. Look at the pyramid. But they're located according to pole star. So astronomers were also architects, and they were also priests. And priests were physicians. Imagine. By the way, Hampton University, I have a friend, her husband went to Hampton. He's an architect. But guess what? This black university, they train architectural engineers. Pam's father was a builder in Barbados and then went to Britain's best university,
Cambridge.
Oxford. First black person in Barbados to, train as an architect. But he was already a builder. Because Africans had brought these building skills from Africa. Most architects only know how to draw a floor plan. But he knew how to do every part of a building because they came out of a different system of education. And on your islands, in the Caribbean and South America, it's true in the United States as well. The everyday black person who couldn't read and write could build a building, could make shoes, could make clothes. Am I telling the truth?
Yes.
They could do everything, and then you in the Caribbean, you call it ground provisions. They grew all the ground provisions, everything you needed for life. You hear me? Because they came out of this system. But we've been told that these were illiterate people. Yeah, they were oral. They came out of oral cultures. But the fact is, these oral cultures, their brains were their books. And their life, was their knowledge because they had to be what they learned. And that's why their character is so strong and why they passed this on to us. So Kemet got this from Inner Africa. So pedagogy means teaching system. Now, we really don't know the Kemetic pedagogy, but we do know the Dogon. We're going to get into the Dogon. And the Dogon have their relationship to Kemet. Now, so you had this teaching system, and in Kemet, you had two levels. One was Act 7 up here. That was the high schools. Those were children were taught. And then Paran is the university. Then these are the centers. There were 4 major centers for Paran. And these are the 4 centers that are listed. Now, I'm finishing a book on how these systems work, and I've been doing research on African secret societies. The last 3 months, I finished a chapter in this book I'm working on secret societies. In the history, there's no history on this. Read the history books. There's no history on secret society. Why? Because Africans kept a secret, a big secret.
Okay.
Any enslaved African was usually between the ages of 18 and 35. Do you know what that means? They all went through secret societies. Every last one of them. Only the babies had. And if you had an elder, you would tell, this book is called Exchanging Country Marks. Do you know what country marks mean? Anybody? That's scarification on the face and on the body, usually on the face. Country marks tell you the degrees of transformation a person went through secret society. The more country marks, the higher level of transformation. And so I don't care if an African was from Senegal, Gambia, Liberia, wherever, Ghana, they would know the marks because the Poro Society, one of the greatest of the secret society, Senku, who led the rebellion on the Amstead, he was an initiate of Poro. Poro was a warrior society. And the societies that fought for African independence through the 19th century, they were all trained in these societies. And they trained everything, priests, warriors, blacksmiths, builders, everything. Women had their societies, men had theirs. This is another thing about secret society. No man is in any woman's secret society, but there's always one woman in every man's secret society. Ain't that funny? That's telling you the power of the woman.
The Outback have a lot of them in Suriname, like the marks in the front, back, and now I know what it means, but I have to go there to ask more.
You have to undergo the transformation to get the answers.
I will get that. No problem.
Yeah, they're not going to just give you the answer.
I know that.
Now you know.
I will.
Now you know. Yeah. So all of these systems work like Kemet because Kemet developed these out of Inner Africa. They raised it to a high point. But we know a lot about these systems. A certain amount about them. And so one of the goals of these systems was, of course, the same life, death, rebirth, to promote and create Jeremiah. How many people know what Jeremiah means? Well, it says it here. Jeremiah means self-mastered person. That was the whole point of going through these societies. The Bambara called it Ma. It shows you the cultural unity we talked about yesterday in Africa. The Bambara, the word for human being is Ma, coming from Mangala, God.
Umba.
Meaning M-A-A-N-G-A-L-A, meaning God is within every man and woman. And so Ma means the same thing as Jeremiah. The person who's initiated in Bambara secret society is one who's self-mastered. The self-mastered person doesn't talk a lot. The self-mastered person is in control of themselves. And when the self-mastered person speaks, they have something to say, but they're good listeners. Jeremiah person. Now, when enslavement comes and then colonialism comes to Africa, what the European does is try and uproot the African system of education so they can put their system in its place. Most Africans, when they write about this, don't write about this because they don't know about this, meaning the African scholars, because they were trained under missionary education. Then they went to universities. They know there was some system, they don't know what it was. And so what happens is the Europeans come in with their missionaries, and what they're doing is creating a middle class in Africa with their own view of how the world should work. And these become Africa's independent leaders. They're the product of that. They'll go to universities and stuff later. So what happens is we know that the Africans who are coming under European education, as we are now, are taught to hate themselves. They're not taught much about their history. And so they become people suspended between two worlds. They're not either in the European world or the African world because they've been taught to hate Africa. But of course, Europeans hate them, so they cannot be a part of the European world. They're suspended between two worlds. You understand? And so this is the problem. But the missionaries are successful. They create a middle class because they give the task to Africans. And Africans help create this middle class. So what happens with the secret societies, they go to the bush, and these are called bush schools. And so in the 19th century, these secret societies are in the bush, and they are run by traditionalists. That means the elders who know the history, who know the culture. They are the ones, because they want to guarantee, the foreigners are now coming in, they want to guarantee that their culture is continued to be transmitted. Now, this comes from an initiate in the Bambara system, a brother named Hampati Ba. Hampate Ba. He's no longer alive. He's a traditionalist. He wrote in the UNESCO series on Ancient African Civilization, Volume 1. Jacob Carruthers, one of my teachers, I'd always call him and say, Jake, what should I read? And one of the times I called him and said, I don't know. And then he said, just before we hung up, oh, you should read Hampati Ba. UNESCO series, Volume 1. I had all the volumes, and I read it. And he was an initiate, so he describes certain things. And certain things, one of the things he describes is the mastery system. Now this is very important because the secret societies could either be traditional, meaning they were purely African, or they could be Islamic. Well, what's interesting is, when the Muslims came into Africa, their first societies were Islamic and they were Arab. But in order to convert Africans, they had to be converted to the African secret society. So the African culture won out on the Arabs. And then the Africans take on this Islam, but it's an African Islam. You get it?
Yeah.
Because whether you're a traditionalist or a Muslim, you are a follower of African culture. And so what you have, this is a system of masters. Masters could be either master initiates. This means someone, because in European education, you're a student. In the African system, those who are undergoing a transformation, they're being initiated. And there are levels and degrees of initiation. We're going to talk about the Dogon system, and we know about it. We'll talk about the African American, and then I want to hear about yours, because you have it in your islands. You have it. And so it could be a master initiate, someone who is of the best of those being initiated, very high level, or a master of initiates. That's a master who is bringing other people through initiation. And it could be in a specific branch of knowledge. Now, this is the thing about the African educational system. It does not produce specialists. It produces specialists, generalists with depth. Meaning, it does not produce just a historian. The historian is a philosopher. He knows the politics. He knows the genealogy. He knows sometimes healing, because they understand life is interrelated. And people who go through this system in the Caribbean, in South America, in the United States, are usually multidimensional masters. Theophila Benga, anthropology, paleontology, history, linguistics, philosophy. He's following his master, Sheikh Anadia, but he goes higher than him. He won't say it, I will. Wow. He's too humble to say it. That's what you're supposed to do. You know, you're supposed to produce masters, and if they exceed you, you should be happy. I've taught 16,000 students. I'd be glad if all of them exceed me. That's the point. You know what I mean? So the point is that the masters can be grand masters who have mastered knowledge of the tradition in all aspects. That in the Dogon system would be Sodaya masters. We'll come into that in a minute. There are very few of those. They know all knowledge. They would be very ancient. They would be Hogons, H-O-G-O-N, priests, but of very high order. And if you to know the truth, you have to be the truth. Think about how much transformation that involves. And they're pure vessels, by the way. The masters who are priests are people who never lie. Among the Dogon, in one case, a priest had to lie to save a woman's life. He had to give up his office because you're a vessel of truth, because there's power that's coming from God through you. And if you're impure in any way, then the truth will be defiled. And so the Bambara have a saying. They say, lying is a moral leprosy. We are people that have a very high value for the truth. Even now, we're no near as high as this, but our culture values truth. Is that true?
Yeah.
All of our cultures. I hate a liar more than anything. And I don't hate, but I really hate a liar. Because almost everything falls from that, lying. You know what I mean? And none of us are perfect. And war is deception, so I'm a warrior. So I'm not going to tell somebody I'm going to beat you this way. But that's not the lie we're talking about, because war is deception. You know, it's the lie of character. It's a lie of telling somebody something. So the Bambara, these masters and grandmasters, they're called Domas and Somas, Noahs or Dona Kibas, makers of knowledge. Now this is really something. That means they're inventing something. We have a term for that in African American culture. I'm sure in your culture you have a term for it. That's a high order. That's almost like God. And Africans are very clear they're not God. They have systems. You can't go beyond God. There's no attempt to even do that. And so there are models for that. Now, when Africans were captured, prisoners of war, kidnapped, brought to the Western Hemisphere, they brought their flags from secret societies all over the Caribbean, South America, the United States. They were secret. In the case of Cuba, they brought in the flag of the Leopard Society. In different parts of the Caribbean and South America, they brought their flags, and the flags are the banners for secret societies. In the United States, where it was very, very hard to operate, Carter G. Woodson observed that the secret societies continued in the United States. How many people have read Miseducation of the Negro by Carter G. Woodson?
Yeah.
How many have read African History Outlined by Carter G. Woodson? I know no hands are going up. That's the book that followed Miseducation of the Negro. That was the book that was showing you how you free education. That's a book you should read. Carter G. Woodson in Miseducation is showing you how your mind is put on a plantation. But this one is showing you how to free your mind. It's really a research book. African History Outline. And what he's showing in there, it's data. He'll make comments, and then he's citing books. My research was in part based on what he had. And I have 40 volumes of Carter G. Woodson's Association for the Study of Negro Life and History. These are scholars who did research for Woodson. Woodson was bad. He was Harvard trained, but he re-educated himself. He realized he had been miseducated, and he re-educated himself. And he wrote books for kids. He wrote them for adults. He was a heavyweight. What he showed was that just as the secret society banners were carried into the Caribbean and South America, they were carried into the United States. And what happens in the United States, the Barbadian Prince Hall brings in the African Lodge that is later buried under the Masonic order, but it's the Black Masons. What he's showing you is that in the United States, what happens with secret societies is they're in slavery, they're continued on the plantation, they're secret. Once we get out of slavery, we hide them up underneath societies that have white names, but they're serving African purposes. Same thing we did with the church. And so Prince Hall's becomes a Masonic order later. Prince Hall says he has nothing to do with slave revolts, but at the same time, he's encouraging them. That's what you call double talk. You know what I mean?
Double speak.
Yeah. Now, during the period of slavery, this becomes the Loyal League in the United States. It was a place called, it was a secret society. It was made up of enslaved Africans and Africans who were so-called free men and women of color. So Martin R. Delaney, who's heard of him? Great 19th century black nationalist who believed in African immigration to Africa. The most brilliant mind blacks produced in the United States 19th century. He helped shape Frederick Douglass. Frederick Douglass worked with him to begin with on a newspaper that Martin R. Delaney founded. Delaney was a medical doctor. Went to Harvard, but the white students didn't want him there. They kicked him out, but he learned medicine. He became a major in the Civil War. He was a member of the Loyal League, secret society. They were plotting the Civil War. These were secret society members who were ahead of the American government. They predicted the Civil War. They predicted the war would be fought for the Union, not for the end of slavery. They linked the issue of ending slavery with preserving the Union. They pushed it. They were years ahead. And Delaney was prophetic, and many of the members of the secret society, many of these Loyal League members were house slaves. Some were called Sambo. We think of black Sambo, but Sambo in Fulani means brave warrior. And some of these brave warriors would be gray-haired black men muscled up, and they're yes sir, no sir, and they're spying. They were the ones giving the Union Army basic information on the deployment of Union troops. You hear me? Secret societies, you know. After the end of the Civil War, what you see is the secret societies become things like the Templars. Anybody heard of them? The Templars is a secret society formed in Arkansas, and it's formed by a couple of black men, and they formed this for economic self-help. So secret societies in the U.S. serve the purpose of economic cooperation, and one of the key principles of African culture is burial society. We believe in life after death. So all black people, they want to make sure they have insurance. The insurance for burial societies becomes insurance companies. Hundreds of millions of dollars insurance companies. I spoke in Los Angeles in the 80s, and afterwards they had a reception for him. It was on Malcolm X. And I met the member of the family that founded one of the biggest black insurance companies in the United States. It were $800 or $900 million. And the founder came up with this on a dream. He had a dream, and that became the basis of the secret society, spirit. You understand? But the point is, secret societies are driving economic organization. Secret societies are the basis for building banks at the end of slavery. Secret societies are the basis for building all black towns in the United States. And if you look at your secret societies in the Caribbean and South America, they were the key to building your societies all over the Caribbean and South America, because those were your highest educational systems that the world has ever seen. Now, the key thing about secret societies is apprenticeship. The main way that they teach is through apprenticeship. It's not the sole way, but it's the main way. That means people apprentice under masters, meaning a novice who knows very little about building learns building from a master builder. That's usually how it's worked all over the Caribbean and South America, but in every area of life. So when you look at, in the United States, for example, jazz, all of that is apprenticeship. Jazz now is in crisis because people are going to jazz schools, and the people teaching in jazz schools often are not masters. Some are, but most aren't. And even those that are being taught in a format of a lecture, when in fact the apprenticeship system is about becoming like the master, and we'll go into what that is. So if you're not around the master, it's very hard to be shaped, either directly or indirectly. And so that's the system that continued. John Henry Clark, Malcolm X, John Coltrane, a host of masters in the States and around the Caribbean, South America, they have come up under masters. Show me a master that's black in the U.S., I'll show you somebody that's come up under master. And most of them don't know it. I interviewed John Henry Clark the last 8 months of his life on his masters. He didn't know this was an African apprenticeship system.
Wow.
But he went through it. Just like most of us don't know we're Africans. Now, John knew he was African, but he didn't know it was an African apprenticeship system. In fact, when I delivered the mother principle to him, he wrote one of the introductions, and he said, "Who you wrote the other?" I sat down and explained this book. I'm writing now. John said, "That's so complex. How are you going to explain that?" And then I think he figured it out by interviewing people like him, showing how he went through it. You know what I mean? I interviewed Theophilo Benga for 18 hours and found out who his first master is. We'll find out in a minute. because I thought it was Diop, but it didn't make sense, you know? This is hard to see, but this is the Amistad Rebellion, and this is showing Senku and the other warriors taking on the ship captain and all the other whites, because they are from Sierra Leone and other parts of West Africa, and they're below deck, they're chained. And the little babies get to go up on deck, and they come back and they say, Papa, they have machetes. They have a whole store of machetes. And so, of course, on board ship was an African who was a blacksmith. So, of course, he could open a lock real quick. And the next thing you know, these Africans had machetes. Give an African a knife or a machete, and you're in trouble. Give them a gun, it's all over. You know what I mean? And so, this is the story of Senku. But Senku was a member of the Poro Society. All the men that fought with him came out of one of those secret societies. They were the baddest warriors on the planet. The Japanese have a saying, to be a good warrior, you need a little black blood in you.
Yep.
What happens when you got a whole lot of black blood in you? Oh. You know, from the Caribbean and South America, the way they would try and defeat the warriors in Suriname and Jamaica or anything else was to recruit other Africans against them. Those were the hardest ones to fight, because one African brainwashed and one conscious, either one is dangerous. And I can tell you in my battle, the hardest one is against Negroes. The white ones are easy. The Negroes are just about as good as you are. They can sense you, read you, feel you, make moves on you. You know what I mean? Okay, what is this Quran? Now we know this Quran, again, by looking, first of all, we'll start with Kemet. And with Kemet, we know this about Kemet's system. It's a system of 7. How many people are familiar or heard of 7? What did you know about it?
Osiris.
Hmm?
Osiris.
The what?
Osiris. Star.
Osiris.
Yeah, star.
Okay. Anybody else? What did you know about 7? We really don't know how it's pronounced because we don't know how the language was spoken, so the vowel is added, because it's SBA in Kemetic writing. But what this means is instruction. Now, what does that star look like? What does it resemble?
A human being?
Hmm?
A human being?
A human being. Exactly right. What they're telling you is a student is a star, not as Hollywood, but as the heavens. I'm an astrologer. Used not to tell people that. But it's the best character system of analysis on the planet. Ron Neffer's an astrologer. We talked about it. You know what I mean? And you know more about a person you do what Charles was telling you yesterday and Mama knows. And more about yourself than you know, oftentimes. But it's all about how the stars are aligned at the time you were born or at any other time. You understand? And in heaven, there's no time. It's outside of space and outside of time. But when spirits want to come to earth, it's according to stellar time, the alignment of planets, because everything in the universe has energy. And these energy alignment at certain points is good for certain things. It doesn't mean anything's going to happen with it, because it's what you decide to do with your gifts, your ka, your destiny. So the thing is, what the Kemites believe, and by the way, pedagogy in the Greek language means bringing the male student to the light, because the Greeks got their idea of education from the Kemites. The only thing is they only reserved it for males. But they had the right idea. It's the light. So the thing is, the star is associated with teaching and with the student, because, first of all, they believe that teaching is opening a door. It's like your African identity. You're opening a door to self-knowledge. Well, this is opening a door to your destiny, your gifts, the thing you like, the thing that makes you happy, the thing that, as a child, you know it's what you want to do. It's your gift. So it's the door. The Kemites also regard this as the face, or light, or sight. It's seeing. It's seeing. and it's to bring into being a transformation. But the key thing about the star, it's to touch the light that is within you, to bring your light out. It's your ka. It's your destiny to bring it out. A good teacher doesn't try and inform a student with a lot of information. They can get that on their own. They try and touch their inner spirit. They try and touch it. You can't always guarantee that that happens. But that was the goal in Kemetic education and in African education, was to bring the light out within. So a good teacher, in the Western system, they wouldn't know this. A good teacher would know the ka of the student. What's the student's gifts? Teach to the gifts. Bring the gifts out. That's the whole point of education. This also means to bring into being and transform. So again, it goes back to this idea that Parank is a life, death, rebirth experience. You got to be. That's really life. That's what happens in life. When you undergo change, then it's like one life. You move from one life to another life. What's that a symbol of? Anybody know? Huh? Right. Is this a living person or a dead person? It's a dead person. And you know that because in the portrayal, it's always the double hand above a person's head. But what the Kemites teach, ka means double. Double means that every person has a spirit that looks just like them. Just like you. The only difference is if there's any illness in the physical body, there's no illness in the ka. The ka is your energy, it's your life force. It's your destiny. It's also when you're weighed, when you're judged, the judgment. It's the heart, but within the heart, it's the ka. It's your life. It's what you've done in your life. It's your whole life measure. And by the way, people who are gifted spiritually can see a person's spirit. They can see the ka. Okay, now what is this system? Africans would not describe this way, because what happens in Africa is it's a total thing. But we have to understand the different parts. But the African would deal with all of them. So, like I said, this system produces masters in many realms. It's just natural because nature is multifaceted. And so you produce people who are coming out of nature. And so here we're dealing with the Dogon. We know a lot about how the Dogon system works. We also know this. The Dogon system has some very close similarities with ancient Kemet. For example, the Numo twins in Dogon, N-U-M-M-O or N-O-M-M-O means word. These are ancestral figures that are like fish. They are God's representatives on earth. We know that when we look at them, the ancestors who represent this system, you will see a symbol of the Numo twins. They happen to be a male and female ancestor. And what happens with the male ancestor is, the female ancestor is, she has a beard of a pharaoh. And the male ancestor has chest extended like breasts. And what this is telling you is the feminine is within the masculine is within the feminine, but it's also telling you that this symbolism is coming from Kemet. And when I wrote the mother principle, I didn't understand how the Dogon could have a connection to Kemet, but then I figured it out later. The Anu people are the founders of Kemet, A-I-N-U or A-N-U. Asar was Anu. This is an Anu person, pre-dynastic Kemet. I had Obinga translate this. And he's a great one. Left foot forward, hand on the staff of authority. By the way, this book explains a lot of stuff that I'm covering here. And he's come to visit the great one who's the pharaoh. He's a great one, and it's 1, 2, 4 registers, means great one on the top. But the pharaoh is not Heru, it's Set, because among the Anu people, Set was the netter for royalty. And the story of Set slaying Heru, that's dynastic story. That's not pre-dynastic. And it's pre-dynastic that's the most creative period of ancient Kemet, not dynastic Kemet. Everything is created in the 10,000 years that gives birth to Kemet. And Asar is Anu. When Sheikh Anu Diop Theophilo Benga went to ancient Kemet to defend Egypt as a black civilization, it was to defend the Anu, these little Twa, the world's first people, the baddest people on the planet. I'm a Twa person, by the way. I'm not Twa. I mean, I love the Twa more than anything. They're the most just people on the planet. Greatest healers, greatest masters of parapsychology, meaning mental telepathy. I mean, these are some heavy people. By the way, Ma'at originates with them.
Question, do they still exist and
Yeah,
maintain
they're
their true
Twa.
culture?
They're Twa, yeah. In some places. Because what's happening is the bigger Africans have disrespected them for a long time. And there's been war in the Congo, so it's really disrupted a lot. That's one of their places. They live in the Kalahari Desert as well. But they still exist. But they are the founders of China. They're the founders of Japan. They're the first people in America.
Everybody.
Founders of Kemet.
In Sweden too, they have a Twa society. They commemorate them every year. I went there once for an exhibition. Beautiful. The government acknowledges these people, whereas little people, Chinese, Indian.
Yeah, they're the formative people of history, but they're left out of history.
The Dogon also.
So the Dogon inherit
also
their
know
knowledge
them.
from them.
They know them. The Dogon knows them also.
Yeah.
And they said that they once they fly in the sky.
Well, the Dogon displaced them because they were in the Bangadiri cliffs when the Dogon came, because the Dogon are
They
retreating.
said they were before us, and they were flying in the sky.
Yeah. Because the Dogon were retreating from Sundiata, they didn't want to be Muslims. And that's another reason why I spent about 30 years.
And they go to the mountain.
Yeah. Because these mountains are uninhabitable. So it was hard for slavery to penetrate into Dogon country. Only a few Dogon actually come here. By the way, Benjamin Banneker was probably Dogon. Banneker.
Yeah, he was. He built the house.
He laid out Washington, D.C. He had the best almanac, and he knew about Sirius B. And no Western astronomer knew about Sirius B at that time. They discovered it at the beginning of the 20th century. Dogon have known about it for at least 700 years. It is the source of the whole universe. It comes out of this dead star, dwarf star, dead star. Right. Astrophysicists agree. The Dogon greatest astrophysicists on the planet. You hear me? So what we know about this system, and then we know that our systems are very similar to it. So first of all, what is this system? It's a mastery system. It's a seva system. It's a method of instruction where you have to die in one state, be reborn in another state. It's a philosophy. The levels of transformation are the degrees of the philosophy. Okay. It reflects stages of human growth and development. Western education only knows how to educate the mind. They do not know how to educate the mind, body, and spirit. They only know the mind. Asa Hilliard helped me on this. He gave me a book on taxonomy of educational objectives. This is the best book Western psychologists, U.S. have produced on education, and they admit the only thing we know is how to teach to the mind. Because they don't believe in the spirit. And they don't know how, except to physical education, how to deal with the body. But when you understand mind, body, and spirit is connected, then you understand how transformation works, because it's a total experience. So this is a system that takes you from the beginning stages of human growth and development that's like a baby, because an initiate is like a baby, taking you to the highest stages of development, if you choose to, and if you're able to reach that level. This is a system that can be used in the classroom, but the best place for this is in the community, because it's a 24/7 system. This system will not work in the classroom if all it is 16 weeks. This is your life. And that's why a Theophilo Benga, a Malcolm X, a John Henry Clark could be the greatest masters, because it's a 24/7 dedication. I went in John Henry Clark's library, 25,000 books. When I gave him the mother principle, pulled out a book. John's as blind as a bat. He took that book and said, that book doesn't belong here, and put it where it belonged, down at the end of the first row of stack. He had read every book in that library. And more than that, because it's a passion, it's a vocation, it's a life. It's not a class. You get it? This is a system of instruction that is best learned through apprenticeship, because the way in which you can work a mental, physical, and spiritual transformation is when you have a human being to model yourself after. Because when you have a human being to model yourself after, then you're going to take on the mannerisms. Malcolm was my second master. I wear a goatee because of Malcolm. I used to try and speak like Malcolm. My first draft of the political legacy of Malcolm X sounded like Malcolm. I used to give speeches like a lot of people did. Because that's how you become, because he was at the foundational stage, we'll get into this later, but that's how you become that. By taking on the attributes of a master that you want to, the way a baby takes on the attributes of their mother. Basically, that's how this system works. So it's a physical, mental, spiritual thing.
But sometimes it's not. But sometimes it's not always accepted.
Say what?
Sometimes it's not always accepted.
What's not always accepted?
To be like the master.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
sure.
That's what I want to add. And but why? I don't know why. But that's the question. People must
Well, you
think
know,
about.
now because of money.
Okay.
Now because people are going after the buck. And so the money, the flash, the stash is more important than
exactly.
excellence.
Than the lecture, and what's really the topic deep inside is, and that's the best thing, and not that's what's all around. You know, it's not about that people are masters. This is what the teaching is. That is the master. That must people really understand.
It's not about what?
It's not about the master, but it's about the teaching.
No, it is about the master, because to know the truth, to be the truth, then you have to have models of the truth. And so this is a system where you take on certain attributes of the master to take on mastery yourself. And so it does require mastery. This isn't just knowledge. It's knowledge that is lived. And so it's the example of people who live the knowledge. And that's why if people try to and they work it, it can be a total transformation. By the way, Hampati Ba, when he was asked, what kind of knowledge do you get when you go through initiation? And I said it, and then I read it, he said the same thing. It's a totality of knowledge. Meaning, if you're learning history, you don't learn a little bit, you learn a whole vast amount of it. Why? Because there's a totality of transformation. You go through a physical, mental, and spiritual transformation. And then as you master this, it becomes a part of you. So it's very different from a little piece of this, or this on 1492 Columbus sailed the blue. You know what I mean? It's a totality. So as I said, this system works the way a child learns from the mother. And the first stages, it's the same thing. In fact, this system is modeled after how a mother teaches a child, because the mother is the first teacher. She's the best teacher. It's a natural system. It goes beyond what the mother will impart, but the mother's the first master. Father too, but it's mainly the mother. Mother transmits culture.
But that's what I mean. That is the knowledge. That is the real knowledge.
Yeah.
That's the master. So if you have a master who didn't teach that the mother is the real master who teaches.
We have a definition of teaching.
They have no good master.
Who has no good master?
If a master don't teach that or don't know that,
Yeah, but the only way an African system a master knows it is to live it.
Yeah.
It is not just giving out information, it's living it. And the only way we really know something
Yeah, but
is
know is
real.
ook know the truth. And if you know the truth, then you know math. And if you know math, then you live math.
If you know
Math, yes, and
yeah.
you live math.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
sure.
because that's if you know the truth, then can you live the
To
truth?
know the truth.
Yeah.
and live it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that everyone is living. If you breathe and you live it.
What did the Kemites say? Speak truth, do truth.
Yeah, yeah.
So that meant,
But that is for your math. It also says that you are your own responsibility. For if you live the truth, it's your own. You judge yourself also. So that
yeah, but now, yeah, that's true.
yeah,
That's true. But the point is, we're talking about the mastery system. And
Yeah.
so how is this
Yeah.
truth learned in the mastery system?
Yeah.
It's by
But
mastering masters.
some people have different masters. That's what I'm saying.
Some people have different masters.
masters. I mean, some people don't accept masters.
Yeah, sure they don't.
That's what I mean.
Sure
that's
they
my
don't.
point.
And some people don't become masters.
Yeah.
That is
And
also
some people accept people to train them that haven't mastered. And I'll be very specific. When I get into African American culture, there's a definition of what a master is in our
Yeah.
culture. In Dogon culture, there's a definition of what a master is
I know.
in their culture, and there's no playing with it.
I know. I've been years ago Dogo. I stayed there a while, so I know what the Dogo means is a master.
Yeah. So this master system produces masters of our race in just about every area of knowledge.
I got a small question.
Yeah.
The author of 48 Laws of Power, Robert Greene, I read all of his book except the last one. The last one that he brought out is about mastery system, but what I think is a European version of his mastery system is influence of this kind of mastery system.
Yeah, well, I don't know anything about that.
You know a little bit about Robert Greene?
No, I don't. No, I'm dealing with African mastery systems. I don't know Robert Greene.
No problem.
Now, the key point here is for African Americans, the Dogon system and the African American system are basically the same. And I think when you look at your apprenticeship systems, your mastery systems in the Caribbean and South America, you're going to find very similar things because you carried African systems into those areas and held on to them. And so in the Dogon system, there are 4 degrees in the Dogon system. The African American system has 3 levels. The 3 levels in the African American system matches the 4 levels in the Dogon system. And that's no accident. But that's an adaptation, because what would happen in the Caribbean, South America, the United States is we would take these systems and apply it to our reality. And so I underwent the Dogon system for 30 years. And I was using an African American system to carry me through it. I didn't really understand that until I read a book called Teaching in Jazz. And it was an African American jazz master that explained how jazz masters are developed. And then I realized that's the same system I was using with the Dogon. But that's the way it works. I said in the identity, you've got to work with African and African American, African and Caribbean, African and South American. And that's what we did. We carried these African systems and we adapted them. And so in the Dogon, there are 4 degrees. In the African American, there are 3 levels. They work the same way. The Dogon system operates according to degrees of words. And they represent philosophical principles. And they represent all the other things that I talked about. And it explains how knowledge is acquired. So the first degree in the Dogon system is called Juriso. G-I-R-I-S-O. Juriso. It's a stage in the philosophy. It's a stage and initiation in terms of human growth and development. Juriso means forward. In the philosophy, the Dogon have what they call the Dunuso. Adunoso is table of signs, A-D-U-N-N-O, Adunoso, table of signs. In the Sodaya system, which is their fourth degree of knowledge, we'll come to it in a minute, they explain how Ama, when Ama creates everything, Ama creates, Ama is God, in her womb, Adunoso, it's God's thoughts. God's thoughts give birth to the universe. This whole universe, the expression of God's thoughts. So these Jiriso forward, these are Dunoso. These are levels of knowledge traced to the womb of God in their philosophical system. So the first level is forward. What this means is knowledge in front of you, simple knowledge, but it's not simple. Because at my age, I started about 30. You're talking about you woke up at 30. I'm starting with the Dogon at 30. What you're doing is working this through your thought pattern to get your thought pattern right with the cosmos. That's not easy at 30. You know? And so Adunoso is like the first level of knowledge. So it faces you. That's why they call it simple knowledge. Second degree is Beniso. B-E-N-N-E-S-O. Beniso. It means sideward. It's also simple knowledge. But it's peripheral. You don't see it in front of you. So it's more complex, but it's simple. Now, this is levels of knowledge, but it's also levels of apprenticeship. As you're mastering under a master, it's levels of apprenticeship. In the African American system of mastery, Jiriso and Beniso correspond to two levels, but it's one. It's described as one, but you usually end up with two masters at two different levels. Now, in a minute, I'll show you how this works. And at the first level in the African American system, as you are apprenticing under a master, the way you learn is by imitating that master, the way a baby imitates their mother, except the difference is you're an adult and you're selectively, you have picked this master. There's a rule in the East and in Africa. It says, when the novice is ready, the master appears. Because life, there's no accident in life. You know? There's no coincidence. And so at the Jiriso level and Beniso level, this is imitation. The way it's learned in Dogon, the way it's learned in Bambara is by imitating the master. It's a selective imitation because each person is going to take on certain qualities of the master. They're not going to take on everything. Whereas the baby may be more immersed in the mother, you're older, you discriminate, you make decisions. And I'll give examples of that in a minute. So imitation allows you to physically, mentally, and spiritually take on the qualities that you're imitating through the master. That's why a body, a human body, it can be direct or indirect, by the way. It doesn't have to be a physical master. It can be a master who's dead. My first master was Garvey. I was born at 39. He died in 1940. But I took on his values. Selectively. Changed my life. We'll go into that. Boloso represents the third level in the Dogon system. And Boloso means backward. Not that you're backward, but B-A-C-K-W-O-R-D. It's knowledge behind you. What does that suggest if it's behind you? What does that suggest?
You don't see it.
You don't see it. Therefore, what kind of knowledge is it?
Invisible knowledge.
Huh?
Invisible
knowledge. Therefore, what kind of knowledge is that?
Spirit.
Spiritual. What else? Compared to knowledge in front and the side, what is really the difference if it's behind you?
Past.
It's what?
Past.
Thought?
Past.
Past. No? What is it? Unconscious. If the knowledge in front is simple and the knowledge on the side is more complex but still basic, what would knowledge from the back be?
Complicated.
Complicated. Yeah, it's hidden. It's difficult. It's not easy to get. And the Dogon say that for knowledge on the Beniso level, this is acquired through synthesis. Meaning, in order to get Beniso knowledge, you have to bring together Jiriso and Beniso, and you have to bring them together and synthesize them. Meaning, you've got to create a whole. I'll explain what this means in a minute when it comes to human growth and development. So, an apprentice under this level works in a certain way. So there's an inner synthesis, just like we were saying with African identity. You're drawing from African principles. You're looking at yourself. You're doing a self-inventory. That's a form of synthesis, right? But in this case, in the African American system, the way this works is, and in the African system, the Boloso master, there are many masters, there's not one. Because what's happening now is you're bringing the system together. And so there are many different kinds of influences that you have to draw from. And so at the Jiriso and Beniso level, it's imitation. In the African American system, there's usually one or two masters at the Jiriso, one or two at the Beniso. Mine was Garvey at the Jiriso and Malcolm at the Beniso, right? But at Boloso, it's many masters. And what you're doing is you're bringing together many ideas coming from many masters, and you're working out a synthesis. In African American culture, that's called improvisation, or in hip hop, it's called freestyle. So what is improvisation? It is taking many influences and then adding something of your own. That's improvisation. That's our culture. Because our culture, we had to work this to be creative. But in African culture, it's bringing in many masters to work out the synthesis of the philosophy on the inside so that you can be the truths that you are exposed to. The highest, synthesis or boloso in the Dogon system is the same as improvisation in the African American system. And in each of your systems, you would have something corresponding to it. And most people don't go any higher than improvisation. Most people.
That's a question. And if you step then to the music, and what kind of music do you describe as like bands like what you say, George Clinton Funkadelic? What kind of, if you can put it in that theory, what kind of
what kind of level?
What kind of level?
Yeah, because there was a teacher, a teacher, I don't name, I think it was Dr. Kaba, that's his name, Dr. Kaba. And he said something, he said, I asked him about the folk music, also about the period of time in the 70s. And he said that he was first introduced to the Dogon to a song of Parliament Funkadelic. But I don't know. I know lots of ways of Parliament Funkadelic.
Kaba's a brother from Brooklyn. Is that one you're talking about? Brother Kaba?
Kaba, yeah, Dr. Kaba.
I know him.
Yes. And
he uses this system. He got it from me.
Yeah. Oh, that's his yeah. Okay.
He heard me give a lecture in New York.
Yes,
and he gives me credit. He doesn't. He doesn't grab
No.
it and rip it off. He's a beautiful brother.
Yeah, he's very good, and he's very positive also. He's very positive.
And he's a brother who taught
and
preschool.
He's a
Preschool.
Yeah.
Most brothers don't teach
in the-
preschool.
Yeah.
Good brother.
Yeah.
We did a thing a year ago in Baltimore. We both did an exchange.
Yes.
But he goes around the country and says, this Shaka did this, blah, 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 blah. I said, nice, brother.
Yeah.
I don't mind. Take it. Run with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now take
But yes, the question, because
Clinton.
Yeah, Clinton, because I can. One thing is on a concert that was our song was arranged, was standing on the first, because then I think that the lead guitar player he say like, people, what you doing? And the
So
people
what
said,
level-
what you do? And the people said, standing on the foot, getting it on and getting it on.
Yeah.
So
And-
what level
and that's-
is George Clinton?
What level?
Funk-
Because
funk
so
level.
because he came on the stage. He came naked. In the old times, he came naked
Okay,
on the
wrap
stage.
it up, because I want to wrap this up because we're running out of time. Good
Okay.
question.
And
I would
what-
say he was an innovator
Yes.
because funkadelic is an innovation off of rhythm and blues,
Yes.
you know, off of soul, and so it's another level. And so that's the highest level in the music. He
Yes.
made an innovation.
Yes.
It's the highest level. You know? And he had space
And the
he
modesty
had political
connection, yes, the
implications.
modesty, yes.
Yeah, he had it.
Yeah, the concept, is it the same? Is it the same?
Yeah,
the concept.
exactly.
Yes, yes,
That's the highest level in the music.
yes.
Now, clear word. The highest level in this system is the clear word, Sodaya. It's called Sodaya, S-O-D-A-Y-I. Sodaya is the highest word revealed to initiates. When you say word knowledge, it means all the knowledge. And Sodaya is the whole system in its ordered complexity. A Sodaya master would be a grand master of either one whole realm of knowledge of all realms. Hogan, very high level. That is their Sodaya. Old person, probably. Highly evolved, highly developed. A very good person. Can't leave the village because he represents the spirit of the Dogon. The clear word conforms to the third level in the African American system. And the third level in the African American system is innovation. Because our emphasis is on creativity. Whereas the Dogon, they're using a dunaso. We don't use a dunaso. You know what I mean? What we're doing is in any field of knowledge, taking it through levels and degrees. And we'll give you examples, scholars, athletes, musicians, my barber. I'm going to have two barbers who are master barbers. I don't care what it is, we take it through the same system. So in our system, Sodaya corresponds to innovation. An innovator is someone who has created a new school of music or schools, new school of science or schools, new school of mathematics or schools, new school in sports, Steph Curry. I've just become a basketball fan. I don't watch sports. I used to play baseball. Used to be a pitcher. Pretty good. 3 shutouts and no hitters, meaning you stop the game. You win the whole game by yourself. Now, I wasn't that good. I wasn't good enough for Major League, but I don't watch sports. But I watch the Warriors. Why? They've innovated the game. It's like jazz on the court. And then you watch them. It's poetry in motion. They just come behind the thunder and they equal it. You know? What is it? 4 even. And so the final game is going to determine who wins the, not the championship, but goes to the next level. But they've created a new game of basketball. You rarely see that. You know what I mean? And so innovation is like a little piece of God. When you see innovation in any area, it's like a piece of perfection. Einstein, see, this doesn't apply just to us. Einstein was an innovator in quantum physics.
Yeah.
Key thing about innovation is this. You need to have technical knowledge, but the average person, let's say a physicist, Einstein was an average physicist. He wasn't that good a student in Germany, he said, because he didn't like the military system in Germany, in his regiment. But the key to Einstein is he had a dream. He saw himself riding light. And that gave him half the theory of relativity. And then he was talking to some quantum physicists and he had an intuitive breakthrough. And that was the theory of relativity. Innovation doesn't occur without the help of the Spirit. George Washington Carver comes directly out of slavery. Einstein said he was the second greatest scientist in the world. I told Pam said, yeah, he rated himself first, didn't he? I said, yeah, Einstein rated himself first, George Washington Carver second. Carver was first. Einstein was second. Why? Einstein had one innovation, a great innovation, theory of relativity. George Washington Carver had so many you can't count.
Yep. Yep.
And he said he didn't get his knowledge from books. He had a master's in biology. He only had a telescope at Tuskegee. They gave him a room. They didn't have any research facilities. But he said, I commune with the spirits. He would go to the forest in the morning. This is what we're talking about yesterday. And the spirits would tell him what they could do, because everything God created is spirit. And they would tell him the healing properties. This man saved agriculture. That's a part of this idea of us being guardians of the universe. He was preserving nature. He was bringing it to its perfection. And he had checks. Henry Ford gave him a blank check. Come work for me. He could have taken $1 billion and Henry Ford would have given it to him. He didn't care about money. He cared about serving humanity, especially his people. He went to Tuskegee, where he wasn't really treated good by Booker T. Washington and hardly pay him any money, $1,000 a year, you know what I mean? But the fact is, he said he wanted to do something great for his race. That was his dedication. This man had so many breakthroughs. Innovators, 400 schools maybe. This man was a genius on top of a genius. He was a healer. He did so many things with the peanut, but he did things with plastic. He did everything. You can't begin. So innovation, technical knowledge, but there's help from God. John Coltrane, innovator in music. Average musician. He was trained by masters. He would go to school with his saxophone. He would practice on school breaks. When he went home at dinner, he had a saxophone around his neck when he ate dinner. He went to bed sometimes with his saxophone. When he went to shop, he had a saxophone. Saxophone was his way of life. He practiced 14 hours a day. Not just the saxophone, astrology, history, different things, but mainly the saxophone. From average, he became a master. He was an alcoholic, a drug addict. And he told God, God, if you get me off of this, which means he got himself off, I will dedicate myself to you. When he was a drug addict, he never stole, never lied. He had good character. When he came off, 2 weeks later, he had a dream. He heard a sound, a droning sound. That became a love supreme. 4 innovations in jazz. Average musician becomes one of the greatest saxophone players ever lay your ears on. You hear me? Because this system produces masters. You hear me? What you have to do is get the right masters to master the masters and then dedicate your life to it. I'm going to wrap this up.
Small question.
May I?
Let me finish this and then
Yeah.
do your questions, because we're really running out of time. Then ask your questions. Hold it, don't forget it.
No problem.
So I could go through the rest. I want to get to the bottom of my subject. So these are all transformation systems. I'll come to the spinal cord. Don't leave, because you're going to miss the main part. Hold on for a minute. I'll be through in 1 second. Okay, I want to show you how this works. Don't leave until you get this working thing. This is how it works. This is what you call the rubber hit the road. I had a long thing, but I don't want to go through that. Just go through this. John Henry Clark. John Henry Clark, one of the greatest scholars we've produced. How many people familiar with him? Raise your hand. He didn't get the credit in his lifetime he deserved. Now he gets 35,000 hits on YouTube. He wasn't getting those hits when he was alive, because a lot of black people said he didn't have a PhD. Huh? In other words, white people hadn't certified him. He told me that. He told me he didn't get the kind of respect that he thought he should get. But now he's getting the respect. But the point is, what was the secret to John Henry Clark? It was his first master, Arthur Schomburg. He reads a book on Africa as a young child, and there's an article in there on Africa by Arthur Schomburg. Arthur Schomburg is like John Henry Clark. He's somebody who was self-trained, that is, he was trained by masters, and he was a bibliophile, collected books. He has the largest collection of books in the United States on African history, probably in the world, the Schomburg collection. And when John Henry Clark hobos from Georgia, you know, you get on a train, you steal your way on one of these boxcars, and he comes to New York into the middle of the Depression. He goes to meet his master. And this is the thing about apprenticeship. Novices show humility towards their master. He runs into the New York Public Library. The first lady on the first floor, he says, I need a letter of introduction to Arthur Schomburg, because, you know, you can't go and meet a master without a letter of introduction. She said, just go upstairs. And when he goes upstairs, there's Arthur Schomburg, always wore the same suit. And John says, I want you to teach everything about Africa to me right now. Now the point is, this is the beginning of John's apprenticeship under Arthur Schomburg. The thing about apprenticeship is, most of the learning is informal. Thelonious Monk, when you apprenticed under him, he rarely taught you music. He would talk. And that's how it works in Africa. But then you watch what they're doing. And so the thing is, John said what he learned from Arthur Schomburg was, because this is his first master, Juriso, he learned the relationship of Africans to world history. The first thing that Arthur Schomburg said is, if you want to know the history of Africa, learn how white people took you out of your history. That's the first thing. Then he said, number two, be consistent. But if you're inconsistent, know why, meaning be logical. And then what John said was, the thing he learned most from Arthur Schomburg was good character. He was a good person. And that's what almost all apprentices say of their masters, because they're imitating the master. So if you check John Henry Clark, you will see the foundation of him is Arthur Schomburg. That's his Juriso master. His Beniso master is a man named Arthur Huggins, who had a PhD and was a high school teacher and had a study group. That was his second master. This is the rubber hit the road. So I just want you to understand how this works. John Coltrane. John Coltrane, you know, I spoke about his transformation. But his first master was Johnny Hodges. And the thing about Coltrane is he imitated Johnny Hodges' spirit. Most people imitate the physical being, the mental being. They talk like him, walk like him, act like him. But Coltrane was so creative that he wanted to capture the spirit. It shows you he wasn't going to be a rote imitator. But that was the way in which he acquired his master, his first master. Theophile Obenga. I interviewed Theophile Obenga for 16 hours. And the first interview, I couldn't get who his master was, because I thought it was Diop. Well, it was. But I should have figured out it wouldn't be his Juriso master. Because when I first interviewed him, he said Diop didn't want people imitating him. Well, that's the first stage. But then when I do the final about 13 hours interviews, he says, the man who I imitated was Leopold Senghor. I loved his poetry. But he didn't want to say it because he said, he didn't influence me that much. But the key word slipped out. I imitated him. I said, I got you. And if you read Obenga's writings, it's poetic. He's got poetry in his writing. That's Leopold Senghor. Leopold Senghor was president of Senegal and was a poet. He was a reactionary too. But he led the school of negritude, which is black consciousness in French-speaking Africa. Amilcar Cabral. Notice who his master is. Amilcar Cabral came to Guinea-Bissau Portuguese, but he joined a study group and he said, we decided to be African. The stuff we're talking about. He said, we returned to the source. He said, I underwent mental conversion. And that's what he was trying to work on his cadres in Guinea-Bissau. And had he lived, maybe Guinea-Bissau would be a better place. Because he knew this African elite had to be converted to an African mindset. He said they had to return to the culture. That's what he did. So he not only studied. The key thing about African identity is you got to do something with it. It's not just study. You got to be involved in your community. You got to do something for your people. It's not just reading a book. And so with Amilcar Cabral, it was joining the people's struggle for liberation. He did an agrarian study called Taking Stock. The Portuguese liked him because he had a smiling face. He was deceptive. And so they sent him into the village. In the first phase, he was married to a Portuguese woman. Later, he got him a black wife. But the Portuguese wife went with him, but she wouldn't go in the village. She was outside the village. And so he studied the agrarian condition in Guinea-Bissau, but he was really studying the social structure of the people. And it was the best social structure that's ever been done. How the tribes were organized. Those that were classless, those were no classes, and he figured out how to organize it. And that's why he's the best leader in the 20th century. He had the clearest theory. It worked. And then he got in and organized around it. And he had no military training, and his army killed 55,000 Portuguese. He lost only 2,500 soldiers. Because he believed if you lost more than 2 people in a battle, it was a catastrophe. And he never killed a child, a woman, or an old person. And he caused the division within the Portuguese that caused the overthrow of Salazar. He was a master. You hear me? But he went from wanting to be white to be an African. And he mastered masters, and his first one was Leopold Senghor, because Senghor exposed him to African history. It was the beginning of him returning to his source.
Is Senghor the first Senegalese president?
Yeah, first he brainwashed and everything else, but he was pushing negritude. And I only give myself because you can't understand this unless you go through it. And so my first master was Marcus Garvey. I'm in the middle of the civil rights movement. When I underwent my awakening, it was 1963 when I discovered that I had been brainwashed, woke up, started to think for myself. That same year, a book comes out, Black Moses. It's written by a white man, Cronin. It's not really a good book, but at the time it was a good book because none of us knew about Marcus Garvey, except for people from the Caribbean or something. Or Malcolm, whose family was Garveyites. And so I'm in the middle of organizing, biggest movement in the North. And I don't know the greatest organizer that we produced in the Western Hemisphere. And what I realized when I studied Garvey is he knows how to build institutions. We didn't learn that in course. He knew how to build businesses. We didn't learn that in course. And I was undergoing African identity, so I'm looking at Africa, and he had this idea of an African return, and I believed, well, our people would go home physically. Later I realized it would be philosophically and spiritually and psychologically. But the point is, I imitated those qualities of Garvey, that I needed. And so I became self-reliant. And I learned to do business. Not too many organizers know how to do business. It's not good to be a revolutionary and be broke. You know what I mean? It takes some resources. You know what I mean? I learned that from Garvey, but then I learned it from my mother. My mother was real good in business. My brother's good in business. But I learned that later with my mother because I didn't see that until later in life, her business skills. So the point is, I imitated those qualities of Garvey. And then later, Malcolm was my second master and imitated that. So the point I'm trying to make is, this is the rubber hits the road. That's old Marcus Garvey. Bad brother.
Very bad.
Bad.
Who was his guérison?
Huh?
Who was his guérison?
Booker T. Washington.
No. There was a Deuce Muhammad who wrote for the Orient Review. He was an Egyptian. And he went to London and studied under him. That was his first master. But I'm going to tell you a little secret of Garvey. I spoke in Jamaica 2 years ago on Garvey. It was the greatest honor in my life because that's my first master. I put more time in preparing that speech than any speech I ever gave. It was an hour and 35-minute speech. But I found out something. This is something real interesting about leadership. Garvey's the greatest leader produced in the Western Hemisphere in the 20th century. It was hard for me to tell Jamaicans some of this because it would be hard to swallow. I told him some of it, because I couldn't tell him the whole thing. When Garvey left Jamaica to come to the U.S., he did not have success in building this movement in Jamaica. He's explained that. But he came to the U.S. supporting King George of England. He supported World War I. He loved the king. He sent him a letter saying so. But he ends up leading the largest movement, anti-colonial movement in the world, and he leads it on an anti-war platform. Most people don't know that. You have to read these volumes written by a brother named Tony Hill, Marcus Garvey, Universal Improvement Association, 7 volumes. I read 6 of them. Read them. And what you will find is Garvey was awakened by the black masses who came back from World War I, who were anti-war. He went to a meeting held by a man named Hubert Harrison, who was from the Caribbean, who was one of the best intellectuals we had at that time. And he had a meeting called Liberty League, a couple of them, and they were fighting against lynching and stuff like that. And Garvey was getting ready to go back to Jamaica because he didn't figure out how to connect with black people. You're going to connect with us and you're supporting the war. You know what I mean? Huh. And so he sees what he sees, this militant anti-war spirit. These are blacks coming back from World War I. They're angry at having been used to make the world safe for democracy. And they're coming back and being lynched, but they're shooting back. And so he said, I see a new Negro. And then he finds out about race consciousness, which is a guiding principle in African American culture. Race consciousness ties us together. That's why 97% of black people voted for Obama. That's why 97% of black people supported the Montgomery bus boycott. It's hard to get black people together, but when we get together, we stand as one. Race consciousness, not racism. We're conscious that white people are oppressing us because of our blackness, and we stand together on that. And Garvey got that. And so it was the masses of black people that woke Garvey up. And then he woke a lot of black people up. Ain't that interesting? Because leading is following. And your people make a movement, not any singular leader. And Garvey was a master because he listened to the people. You hear me? He learned from the people, and he was transformed by it. And that is this system. So what I'm telling you is if you want to set up a Purank here, the key thing is don't mess with this pedagogy, because this works. This is no esoteric thing about, oh, the ancient Kemites did this. We don't know what the ancient Kemites did. That system is no longer operative. We know that their values, but we don't know their initiatory system. We know the Dogon, we know the African American, and each one of you should know something about your own initiatory system in your islands and in South America. And those are the systems we need to build on to build masters. You can take people through identity transformation, but this is taking them through mastery of your purpose, what you're here for, whatever it is you want to do. And it can be you take on a master who you know. If you're a writer and you know someone who is at the innovative or improvisational stage who's really good, then that might be the person you want to look up. Or if you're an organizer, you want to take on somebody who's older, who knows stuff, who's really good, that can be your master. Or it can be someone that's passed on but has the qualities that you want. But the point is, this apprenticeship system is the basis for shaping masters. It works. You hear me? It works because it produced the masters of our people. I started this yesterday by saying our greatest weakness is we underestimate our strengths. And this is one we really underestimate. We don't even know about this. Even the ones who lived through it didn't know it was an African system. And they're the ones often saying we lost our history and culture in slavery. You've held on to the highest parts of it. It's produced the heaviest people. You use this, this will work. And some of you are already using it. Because coming out of your culture, it's natural to be drawn to people like you. The key thing is when you're picking a master, they match you. They got qualities like you. You know? Like Tupac was your first experience. Well, that's a master. No doubt about it. That's a man. He's passed on. And he's not alive. But you can draw the positives from him. You have. That's an apprenticeship. That's an apprenticeship. So it can be direct or indirect. So that's it. It's an introduction. But this works. That's all I can say. It works. You don't want to be a master? Fine. That's true. Some people don't. But me, I don't know about you, but I want to be the best in whatever I do. The best. Not the second best. Not the third best. The best. And that means I want to have the best people shaping me. You know what I mean? The best people. And I will always acknowledge my sources. I didn't steal what Jake said. I want to acknowledge my master. He's in heaven. I want to say, thank Jake. He was one of the kindest, most loving, beautiful people you could lay your eyes on. You know what I mean? That's the nature of the system. You had something to say earlier.
Yeah, I will make it short. Jazz music, in what level is it? From the Benny Soul, Anu Soul, so unique, the levels of music. And the question that he had on funk music, because jazz is very wide and broad and complex, on which level it's supposed to?
It's not jazz music, but it's the musicians within the jazz. So, for example,
Louis Armstrong.
One of the greatest innovators. If there's anyone that nearly invented jazz, it would be Louis Armstrong. He didn't. No one person did. But he comes the closest to it. He was a great trumpet player, great singer, but he innovated in terms of the art form itself. So the thing about jazz is, like any area of music or leadership or the trades or whatever, the level is determined by whether or not the person is someone who has drawn from other masters and added something of their own, or they've created a new system. So a Miles Davis is an innovator. He had 4 schools he innovated. Coltrane's an innovator. Thelonious Monk is an innovator. Because they create new schools. Dizzy Gillespie's an innovator. Dizzy only innovated 2 schools, but the most complex, bebop. And then he also comes up with the Mariposa out of Cuba, the Afro-Cuban rhythm.
I forgot the piano player, the jazz piano player, last year, in the time of Louis Armstrong.
Otis Silver?
No. I forgot his name.
Was he blind?
No, not Tom Basie. He was not blind. Betty Boop. The Betty Boop was influenced by him. Billie Holiday. He played also with Billie Holiday. I forgot his name. But he was a great jazz artist too. The other question, like, so Dewey was clear word and Beniso was backward. What kind of word is Anuso and Boloso is backward. What kind of word is Beniso and Adunoso? The words.
Jiriso is forward. Beniso is sideward. Boloso is backward. Sodaya is clearward, the highest level.
I got clearward, I got backward, I got sideward. Adunoso?
Adunoso is not levels and degrees of transformation. Adunoso is a table of signs. Europeans like to call it a symbol, but it's not a symbol. Because if you look at a person who comes out of voodoo, for example, a voodoo priest, they will have a drawing on the ground. It is made of cereal. That drawing brings down a spirit. It's like that. Adunoso is invisible drawings from a Ma. What the Dogon are saying is the universe was created through God's thought. And so Adunoso is God's thought. It's the basis of the symbols that are used, like Jiriso, Beniso, Boloso. They all are coming from Adunoso. Adunoso is not degrees in the philosophy. Adunoso are the outlines of God's thought, and it's these outlines of God's thought that give birth to life.
Vibration?
Hmm?
Vibration?
It's a thought.
I thought.
In Sodaya, there's an actual book that's been put out, which is a translation of some of Sodaya. Now, the Dogon ain't giving up their real stuff. But the Sodaya are a series of drawings. They're a dunaso. And these are tables of signs. So that's, and then from this comes Jiriso, Beniso, Boliso, the whole system. So it's a different system in that sense. But it's interesting because could the universe be the product of God's thoughts? That's interesting.
Yeah.
Think about it. I'm not saying it is, but it's interesting.
May I say something?
I know it's late.
Very short.
9:30.
Very short.
Go ahead.
Like I said, for convenience, burned still means or sounds like kemat, right? What I saw in this word or name or this last part about the Dogon, somewhere I saw, because my attention was with filming, somewhere I saw Nomon is name or word, right?
Right.
What's name in Kentucky?
No,
No more
I didn't spell it.
N-O-M.
Oh,
Or
interesting. Yeah, very interesting.
That's all.
So, you think there's some interest in setting up a Quran here? Do you have an interest in that? It's going to take serious organizers who want to do it. But all it takes for Quran is conscious people. That's all it takes. That's a lot. That's all it takes.
So if I'm correct, can you explain the Quran movement?
Yeah, the purpose of coming here was to do the speech on Saturday, but the main thing was to discuss Quran. But we had to discuss the cycles of consciousness because that's key to Quran. Because you've got to have some conscious people for a purpose. The whole idea is to use this as a place where you can refine and develop leaders and help people in their own awakening process. So what we're going to be doing, people listening, around the states is we're setting these paraks up. And some of this we'll do training on the internet. But always we got to come into an area and let people know how this works, get a feel for the people. Because this transformation of consciousness is not something the internet is going to be the basis for. There's some stuff we'll be able to do on that. And then there's interaction that we'll have with key people on a regular basis through Skype and other things where we can talk and refine what people are doing in terms of selling stuff. But, this is key because what we need is to be able to transmit this to the younger generation. And that's the purpose. I retired for this. This is the rest of my life work, is to do this. So I'm just here to try and help people with whatever I can to show you how it works. But I can tell you it works. The last example, what we call rubber hits the road. And I got a lot more, I didn't have time, of how this mastery system, how people who are masters have applied it. So that's the system. It's a lifelong thing. So people deal with how much they want to deal with. Like Weeba Sangha has been here for a long time. We'd like Paramp to be part of his Weeba Sangha, long time. It's your choice. But, I think that Sister Gloria and others, they have consciousness and the dedication. They made real effort to bring us out here. Took some real effort on their part. And I know there's a real interest. And got the kind of organizing skills that can make this work. So that's the point.
Last question, but it's very, very important, but it has not to do with this topic, but another topic. It has to do with in the future, like in 2018, it's already active in Europe. In 2018, the Netherlands is planned not to let people pay in cash anymore. Everything gonna be digital. Everything gonna be microscopic. Everything gonna be digital. Everything gonna be technical. They are preparing to let most of the people in that case, all people being introduced to the chip. What is the best advice like you can give us for like the black community to stay out of it, because they're gonna force people to take it? But how can you remove yourself from the chip, and how can you stay survive without being dependent upon them while still living in Europe? Because all the countries will have their part by being introduced to the.
We already have that.
Being introduced by the chip and not paying cash anymore. There's no paper money, only digital money.
That's a decision? They've already made the decision?
It looks like
Or
it.
is that, looks like that's.
They're definitely gonna plan it, and they're gonna force people to do it. And my advice is, don't take the chip, because it's gonna be the end of your spirituality. That's what I believe. It's not yeah. I don't know how to explain it. It's a little bit difficult, but you want to live on, but not on other higher powers, if I may say so.
Well, you're asking me a question I don't have an answer for, because first of all, it's news to me. I know that they're doing some things on the chip.
Okay.
That everything is going to be on the
Digital.
chip as opposed to money.
But it's almost like that right
Yeah,
now.
Yeah.
but you said it already, we have to make ourselves spiritually strong.
Yeah, but I'm not going to say, I think you should do this, I think you should do that. I think you have to figure that one out yourself.
I think you should
But money is
improvise.
corrupting, but poverty is more corrupting. So choose between the two. It's not a matter of being excessively rich, but being able to feed yourself and be comfortable.
Thank you.
So, this time, people, I know you want more knowledge. You cannot get enough of it. And I still understand the young man what he means, the body chip, put it under your skin. But
Oh, okay. That's
but
what
it
it
is
is.
not that far yet. And you know,
Yeah, I have heard of that.
yeah,
Yeah, really close.
things can change, but we have to change it ourselves.
Definitely.
Yes, it's going to be a new government, and we really want to thank T'Shaka for being here with his wife, his lovely wife, and we want to give you something from Suriname, from the organization, from Bimasanga. I know your hair is a little
That's
But-
an understatement.
But I think you will remember Suriname and Holland and
Thank you.
this group of people who are interested.
So you can use it.
Yes, but you would get another one.
Thank you. I like you.
Don't slap him with that.
Thank you.
It's a
This
rule
is
when
our
you're on the
form of
boat.
art. It's our form of art. I probably have seen that it is very African-like
Yes, it
because
is.
we are Africans,
Yes.
although we are living all over the world. We're all
Yes, it
Africans.
is.
Yeah, nice.
We want you to have this and
Thank
think
you.
about us here, but not only think about us here, but maybe in the future come back
We
and
will.
see that some leaders are arisen from this group. Because I think everywhere there is somebody with a gift to be a next leader. And maybe in this group they're going to be a next leader, and we're probably going to need some support.
And we are
Yes.
definitely gonna
Yes.
contact you about it.
Okay,
Yes.
good.
So-
And I should say this also, this book here summarizes some of the things that's discussed today.
Can we all stand up and thank Dr. Sarah?